Point is, the world is constantly changing. So the idea of system dynamics is to see how subsystems interact and how does the system behave over time, so that you can find what changes we can make to policies, decisions, etc., to get the changes and the direction that we actually want in the future. Now, when I went to the US, initially you were very proud of this. Oh, I've hung out of trains, and like people are like, "Whoa, are you crazy moving trains?" Like, yeah, that's how we did. Every day it was like that, right? But then later you start sort of thinking, you say, look, that's kind of ridiculous, isn't it? Like, why do we have to travel that way? Why do we have to live like that, right? What will make people happier? What will make people healthier? What will make people enjoy their life more? We need to evaluate what trajectory do we need, which will bring maximum happiness for the most maximum people, where nobody may get everything that they want, but it has to be an intelligent choice. It has to come from people. People say, I want that, and the government says, no, you should be happy with this. People will find some way of doing that. At the end of the day, some kind of ethical, mental, emotional, spiritual revolution is what we need. Because once we understand what we need to make ourselves happy, and we have to decide what matters to us. Is it income and GDP, or is it happiness and well-being?
Hi Manas, welcome to this podcast.
Hi Bhairavi, thank you very much. It's great to be here.
Thank you for coming on Ganesh Chaturthi. I feel like it's an auspicious
Absolutely.
day.
I think it's a good day to talk about the future, about good things, about
Okay.
how to make the world a better place.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Before we begin, I wanted to introduce you to the listeners. You do so many things that I wasn't sure how to fit it all in one introduction. So I'm going to try, but please fill in any gaps. So Manas Rath is a multifaceted sustainability professional. If I can categorize his work into two parts, one is he consults early stage startups who are working across a wide range of sectors, including health, air, water, waste, built environment, urban agriculture, on the principles of systems dynamics and also business management.
Really, just companies who are solving urban problems in India,
Got
trying to
it.
make cities a better place to live in.
Perfect. And then on the other hand, he works a lot with individual citizens, and he's trying to create movements where residents of cities, to begin with Mumbai, come together and really do something to solve the issues that Mumbai is facing. And prior to this, Manas has a background in management. He has a background in investment banking. You're also the director of a social impact consulting organization.
I was a co-founder of a company called Blue Water Company.
Yes.
That is more of a social enterprise in water, sanitation, and waste management.
And Dasra.
And then Dasra, I worked there, yes. I worked at Dasra, where we worked with amazing non-profit organizations mostly, but also philanthropists, impact investors. The phenomenal experience.
So you come from a very wide arrays of experiences. But outside of this, Manas is also a Reiki master into philosophy, mainly the principles of Buddhism and also Vedanta. He's been a mentor to me in sustainability and also other aspects of life. And I'm genuinely grateful that you're here, Manas. Thank you so much for
Absolutely great to be a
being
Bhairavi.
part.
Yeah, congratulations on getting the show on the air, on the road, whatever you call it.
Yes.
So it's lovely to be here with you.
Thank you so much, Manas. Before we begin, or rather to set the context, could you explain to the listeners what systems dynamics is, which is a principle and a practice you strongly work with?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you look at system dynamics, and today, things like systems design, systems thinking are very popular, but it comes from the idea of system dynamics. System is where there are multiple components which interact with each other, which affect each other's behavior. And therefore, you have feedback systems that work and affect the behavior of each part of the system, each subsystem, and then therefore the whole system becomes very complicated to understand because there's so many things going on. You don't know what is going to interact with what and create what outcome. The other is the dynamics part, which is that things are constantly in motion. We tend to a lot of economics, for example, pays a lot of attention to equilibrium, right? You have these nice charts and curves say this is how it will be. Point is, the world is constantly changing. So the idea of system dynamics is to see how subsystems interact and how does the system behave over time, so that you can find what changes we can make to policies, decisions, etc., to get the changes and the direction that we actually want in the future. So that's the idea of system dynamics. It comes from a engineering sort of discipline, because they're your dynamic systems, because whether it's electrical, mechanical, chemical, how do you control it, how do you direct it?
Right.
I was just very fortunate that the person who actually founded system dynamics in the 1960s and 70s, in my undergraduate years, purely chance, mistake, whatever accident, but through a friend's introduction, I got to work with his research group for almost 5 years. and that was sort of foundational in how I see things, understand things, and try to understand how things behave, why they behave a certain way, not just what is happening today, what's the underlying structure, players, incentives, rules, decision-making mechanisms that cause a certain behavior, and how is it likely to play out in the future, and how do we change that to get the changes we want.
Before you came into the sustainability field, when you were with investment banking, did you feel there's a difference in the way you approached it because of this background versus the other investment bankers?
Uh,
Or rather, just the
uh,
way you thought about the world?
at that point, maybe, but I'm not sure as much because to some extent, yes, because once you start seeing things in a different way, you will always see it in a different way, right? So you do tend to focus more on where things have been, why are they the way they are today, not just focus on what is going on today, but why is it that way? That's probably a combination of just each of us think differently, right? We are trained to think differently, our environment, our ecosystem. So it's probably partly that, but I think the system dynamics part is definitely a big part of it. So yeah, so and also, just in my career, I spent 7 years working with a business in an operations role before I moved into investment banking. So I also had that understanding of the complexity of life, which often when you start life as an investment banker or a consultant, you sort of don't understand a lot of the nuances and the small complexities of how things happen. And I think that added to my sense of understanding how businesses work, how entrepreneurs think, or how employees think, and maybe sometimes in a little more nuanced manner than a way a lot of career investment bankers might think. Yeah, yeah,
I'm actually quite pleased to see that you learn systems dynamics within the engineering school, whereas often in engineering we look at things isolated in an isolated manner and just solve them as just those pieces. So
yeah.
it's great to hear that.
So actually, while it came from the engineering discipline,
Right.
and my professor, Professor Jay Forrester, but by then he was in the management school, and his thinking was how do we take these engineering ideas of systems that work together that affect each other's behavior. How do we use that for urban, social, economic systems? So actually, by 1995, when I worked in his group, it had been almost 40 years of working in social systems for him. Close to 40, 35 years. So he had done a lot of work on cities and how cities grow and decline, and how economies behave. Why do you get bubbles and busts, and how does decision making happen? So done a lot of work, and then of course environment was a big one with the Club of Rome and the growth limits to growth study, looking at how do different decisions that people are making about the economy, about housing, about industry, about investing, how does all that combine to create the kind of pollution and then climate change that we're actually seeing today, which they modeled, 50 years ago, right? 55 years ago, actually. Yeah.
It's great that you got to work with the father of systems
Right.
dynamics.
It's mind blowing. Yeah.
Uh, So you've been born and brought up in Bombay, except for the time where you were in the US,
Yeah.
right?
So, except for 8 years or so. Yeah.
Wow. What's your relationship with the city?
Oh, you know, I'll tell you, I think there've been maybe two phases of it. I think till about 2005. Actually, no, let me say, till I moved to the US, I was very proud of Mumbai for all its good and bad. I was proud that, oh, we got to be tough in Bombay, we hang out of trains, and, oh, this is a rough city where, you get to sort of be tough, right? And Bombay then was of course a very different city from what it is today, but still had a lot of that speed and that craziness and that sort of you still have to be fairly tough to get by in the city, right? Now, when I went to the US, initially you were very proud of this. Oh, I've hung out of trains, and like people are like, "Whoa, are you crazy moving trains?" Like, yeah, that's how we did. Every day it was like that, right? But then later you start sort of thinking, you say, look, that's kind of ridiculous, isn't it? Like, why do we have to travel that way? Why do we have to live like that, right? And that starts changing your perspective. It takes time, but it starts changing your perspective towards what life should be like. And then, over time that, did classes on the social studies side, you start thinking about things like gender and all. You say, yeah, actually, how does an old woman sort of take a train in Bombay, right? It's very difficult, it's dangerous, it's hard. Or how does a young child do it, right? And then you sort of start shifting your perspective around what is cool, what is good, and what is not. Um, I think more recently, the last 15 years, I think as I've grown older and after having kids, questions about pollution, whether it's air, the noise, the lack of open spaces, I felt that it's becoming a harder and harder place to have a decent quality of life in, to be honest. And so that also informs a lot of the work I'm trying to do now, which you're also part of. I think it's a great place to live in many ways. I think if you're well off, and comfortable, it can be a phenomenal place to live in. Obviously, if you're not well off economically, financially, it can be a very rough place to live in. A lot of people come here because they may not, this may be the best choice they have, but that doesn't make it a good choice. But it may be the best choice they have, right? But I think it can be a harsh place to live in and a very unhealthy place to live in, regardless of your income or your gender or your age. So I think it's very, very far from a great place to live in my view. It has some great things. I think it's got great raw materials. It's just been shaped into some not so nice place to live in, I feel.
Why do you think that is?
Why has it become like that?
Is it the population that most people talk about? That we have too many migrants coming in, including people like me.
Yeah, well, I think, look, I think population is definitely one issue, but I don't think that's the core issue. Because I can definitely imagine that a city like Bombay, with its area, with its natural resources, with its history and culture and wealth, right? You could have your 20 million people, Mumbaikars, actually living in a very nice, high, decent quality, very peaceful and comfortable way of life. It's not unimaginable. It's not like we have to reduce to 8 million people to get that.
Yeah.
But I think it's a combination of a few things. I think, Mumbai has been a city where the culture has been you kind of do your own thing and you don't, and that used to be a positive, right? Rest of India was like, oh, everyone is always in your business. What are you doing? Where are you going? Who you? Bombay, you're left alone. You do your own thing, right? But when you do your own thing, systems don't work like that, right? You need that glue that looks at how everything comes together. And I think as citizens have become very self-involved because their life is busy, it's tough, you're ambitious, and so on. We outsource that gluing part to the government, right? And there you've got some really two or three forces that come into play. One is, do all government officials as a system, do they understand what the goals or the aspirations are and do they work towards it? And sometimes you get apathy. Sometimes you get like, who cares? I'm here to collect my salary. I mean, there are a lot of good people in government, right? So, but the system sort of ends up often making people quite apathetic to the situation or to the job that they're supposed to do. Secondly, of course, whenever there is money, there are consequences of having money. There's also in natural resources, you call it the natural resource curse, right? Places that have got the most natural resources tend to be the poorest, the most underdeveloped, right? Whether you see in India with central India, eastern India, you see across the world, right? So there is a curse of money, which is when money comes in, people behave differently, right? The behavior changes, the priorities change, their perspective changes. And I think that leads to very narrow, self-centered, or narrow thinking and not thinking more broadly about the city and all its people as a whole. So I think somewhere in all this, I think people being too engaged in their own life and too much money being there, which then also allows a lot of corruption and sort of capitalist, the ultra capitalist or the dirty capitalist behavior. I don't want to give capitalism a bad name. Capitalism done right can be the most amazing tool for improved quality of life and so on. But capitalism on steroids is usually quite, it ends up being quite destructive. And that's kind of where we are at in Bombay.
But money is something that's again concentrated, right? Not everyone has the money to then exploit the city. But then why has it gotten this bad if most of the money is only concentrated? I remember you were mentioning some statistics during the presentation 2 weeks back about Mumbai being the first, is it? No, 17th
17.
wealth rank among all cities.
Yeah,
But in terms of stress, it's the number one. And in terms of, I think, economists' global livability index, it's 118 out
that's
of
right.
140.
Yeah.
So why is there? So if the wealth is only concentrated among a few people,
Yeah.
why has the rest of the city gone to dogs because of that mindset?
Well, because when wealth gets concentrated, those people have a choice to make. They can invest their money in ways that benefit the whole city, or they can invest their money or use that money to influence the system in ways that benefit themselves, right?
Yeah.
So you can go and create construction in certain places, but then not care about what happens elsewhere or exploit people who live there. You can avoid taxes, and then that affects how the city, functions. And then, you have this regulatory capture that
Mm.
happens where then the government starts working based on certain incentives or certain priorities, which are not necessarily the priorities set by the constitution or not the priorities of everybody, right? So you kind of have this, in India, I'd say, culturally, we have this sort of, idol worship kind of culture anyways, right? So it becomes very easy for people to just blindly follow and do whatever somebody who has got wealth or power wants without really thinking that we are actually all equal or we are one, or the constitution at least says we are all citizens, therefore one person, one vote. But that kind of goes out of the window, right? So therefore you have a city which is catering to the needs of certain people,
Yeah.
while either ignoring the needs of others or actively trampling on the needs of others, because only by doing that can you meet all the needs and the greed of certain people. Now, I don't mean to obviously suggest that all the rich people in the city are apathetic and don't care. Bombay does do a lot of philanthropy, there are a lot of amazing people, but somewhere the overall system tends to, just like in government, you've got a lot of good people, you've got some amazing people, but a lot of things tend to end up not working well, right? Because the system, the incentives, the fears of people all comes together and creates a certain kind of dynamic. I think the same happens in society. You've got some amazing people in the city who have got lots of wealth, but then there's only so much they can do. And then there are enough people who don't care about those things or have a very different perspective. And you put out something interesting, right? You said, what do we do about population? I think a lot of people would say, shut the doors, send people out. Why are they moving here? Which is actually, if you think about it purely objectively, why not? You could do that, right? Uh, the legal framework may or may not allow it to shut borders within a country. There's obviously a lot of wealth being made off poverty. So we should understand that poverty is not like it's not a problem that exists in a vacuum. Today, when slums get created, somebody is making a lot of money on that. They're taking this land which belongs to nobody or belongs to somebody. They're allowing people to come and settle there. They're building houses and renting it out to these people. They are making money by providing water and electricity to these people, by providing protection from the police. So it's not like poverty just exists because of some natural force. It is being cultivated and allowed and expanded in the city. And that's why we have so many people and they come and live in all kinds of conditions and all kinds of places, which are, honestly inhumane and dangerous in many cases. A lot of wealth is created because of the poverty in the city. Because unlike in many places, the poor in Bombay are not unproductive. In fact, they're highly productive, right?
Probably
They're
among the most productive.
they work hard, they're earning money, they're running businesses, they're providing services in the household, in industry, in offices. So therefore, when they're earning a lot of money, so they're large numbers and they're earning X, and you say, look, by providing these people with basic services, I can make 20% of X can come to me. That's a huge incentive for a lot of our sort of, people in society to provide that service to the poor and saying, come over, we'll give you a house, we'll give you this, that, and you give me 20% of what you earn, right? And for a lot of people in this country, unfortunately, even today, 80% of what they can earn in Bombay is still much more than what they would earn back in their village or wherever they are, right? And therefore they come and they stay and I think somehow they manage. The amazing thing is that, through all that, they tend to be reasonably healthy, actually. They tend to be reasonably happy. They tend to be, non-violent. They celebrate their festivals, and to them, they're living a decent life, often hoping that the next generation will be better off, which it often is. So it's kind of some it's amazing, right? That even in their poverty, you see a certain kind of resilience. And I would say there's resilience, right? Resilience makes you feel like, oh, you're kind of holding on, but no, people actually enjoying their life. They enjoy the community, they enjoy it. And many of them, some say, yes, if I had the same opportunity back home, I would go back to my village. A lot of people say, no, I mean, I know these are not clean, nice living conditions, but I'm still happier over here than in my village because of the social condition, the economic condition, the variety of life, the excitement of life. I think so. In those days, Bombay offers something that maybe almost no other city in India still offers, because it's been multicultural, multilingual for so long. I think that still stands out. Maybe it doesn't stand out as much today as because other cities are sort of caught up. So in the past, Bombay was truly a unique city in India. Today, not so much. But I think for a lot of people, it still offers something that other cities don't offer.
Is it also that maybe they are able to send back a lot of money because rates, the
Yeah,
salaries, etc., are higher in Bombay?
yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
but you brought up that point of them being relatively happy. I've also seen that there's one when I initially came to Bombay, genuinely the people of Bombay who made my decision to stay
Stay on,
on in
yeah.
Bombay rather than say move to Bangalore, where at that point I had no friends. I remember I spoke. There was a street, a guy who was selling clothes, I think on Bandra's Linking Road or something like that. And I was looking for a clothes store, a regular, like a proper clothes store, and I asked him.
Yeah.
Now that's technically competition for him, but I was hesitant to ask him. I did, and he was like with a very great, genuine smile on his face. He helped me with
Yeah.
the directions, and that was really touching. I also felt sad, but it was also very touched. What do you think about the city? What is it about the city that makes people so helpful and I don't know, open
Yeah,
minded and
that's
hearted?
that's a good one. I mean, I don't know if I have a great answer. I mean, there are a lot of different answers I hear. Some people will say, it's the belief in karma. People just expect that, okay, this is my situation in life because of whatever reason. I believe in that, and I think there is truth to it, but that's only half the story.
Right.
That could be one. The other is, at the end of the day, I think a lot of people in Bombay, even when they're in, see, I often talk about gratitude, right?
Right.
You can have a lot and be ungrateful because what you think you deserve is much more than what you have. So you can have a lot and still be like really angry and upset and bitter because you think I deserve a lot more. Or you can have little and still be very grateful because you could have had a lot less or your expectations are even lower. I think that plays out for a lot of people in India, right? That even if they have little, they know that life could be much worse. And therefore they have gratitude for wherever they've reached. And when you have gratitude, you're able to help others, you're able to be generous, even if you actually have very little. And if you're ungrateful, you can have a lot and still not give a damn, you only want more, right? So I think with a lot of people in Bombay and generally a lot of people in India also, I think there is that. So a lot of these contradictions coexist, right? You're poor, but you have gratitude. You also see where, people's behavior towards you may be different from their behavior towards me because of gender issues, or maybe different towards somebody who's, let's say, poorer than them, right? And that also works both ways, right? There are times I've seen where, a rickshawala will give 10 rupees to a beggar on the street, but the person sitting at the back will not, right? At the same time, you know that I know people who will treat me very well because they perceive me a certain way. But if somebody is much poorer than them, and even though they're not from a well-off background, right? But they look up to me and treat me very nicely. But if at the same time, let's say, somebody poorer than them comes, they'll shoo them away and say, "Get out of here," right? So there are a lot of complexity in human behavior that coexist, right? So there's no one answer, but I think there's a sense of gratitude that people have to be in the city. People get a lot from it. They say that at the end of the day, while people are stressed, nobody goes to bed hungry in Bombay. I mean, that's what a lot of people say. I think it's largely true, not entirely. So people feel कि चलो पेट भर रहा है. People and genuinely, I think people have seen that the next generation is much better off than they were. And I think a lot of Indian parents are willing to sacrifice for that forward movement. Right? They may or may not move out of the slums, but they'll have much better jobs, much better income. They're then able to send their kids to much better schools or so on. So I think that forward movement in life that they see, anyone who's been in Bombay sort of 5, 10, 20 years sees a certain forward movement. And then I think that culture also rubs off and you kind of assimilate. Now, that's not to say that, obviously not everybody in Bombay is nice and kind and helpful. There's a lot of crime that happens, there's a lot of cheating that happens. So all that
Huh.
coexists.
So I guess my question is now, if people are happy with where they are, and if they see only more money as the definition of growing in life, and like you said, people are probably okay with the living conditions they are in, then we are just do you think the privileged, those of us who are privileged, are just pushing for livability if that's not what they want? Are we not taking them into consideration, or should they also start, not just them, everyone should start thinking about growth differently? It's a lot of questions in one, but
Yeah. Uh, Well, look, if you go and ask the 12 million odd people who live in the slums of Bombay, I don't think many will tell you that this is great, we are happy, this is perfect, nothing can be better. They all know that the living conditions are bad, it is tough. It may be tough in the summers due to heat, in the monsoons due to rain. They know that there is a lot of abuse and crime that happens. So it's not like they're thrilled with their living conditions at all, right? So don't take that away from what I said.
yeah.
They know it could be much worse.
Oh,
That's the point,
got
right? That, in their village or in some other place, or they could be even worse off than
it.
this. So it's not like they'll say, no, just leave us alone. Everything is perfectly fine. We don't want any change. I've never heard anybody say that, right? But the change that we want to create may or may not be what they want. They may want a change while they're living where they are. They don't want to be sent 20 kilometers away and said, here, now you have a house on the 18th floor. Look at the amazing view. Now, we may assume that that's a great this thing for them, right? But they may not see it that way because they're used to living on the ground with their neighbors, with the doors open where people are running in and out all the time, right? That's the way they live. So, so we have to take into account what they want. At the same time, it may not be possible, given that you have a certain amount of land and so on, it may not be possible necessarily to give them the kind of housing that they would enjoy and the kind of space that they would enjoy while saying all of you live at the ground level.
Right.
So you have to find something. And therefore, I always feel that, compromise is the process of saying, how do all of us get 70% of what we want? Nobody will get 100% of what you want. But it's a 30% you have to give up. But you should get 60, 70% of also what you want. If you have to give up 70% and get only 30%, you'll be unhappy. And if you want 90% and are not willing to give space to others, then you're being overly greedy, right? And I think that is the space we need to pragmatically aim for, is that how do we take everybody who lives in the city and say, okay, make your wish list.
Right.
Can we find a way that everyone gets 70% of what they want? And I think that is largely doable as long as people are not too self-centered or too greedy about it, right? If everyone says, I want a 6,000 square feet home, you're not going to get 70% of that. But I think people in Bombay are also reasonable enough because we see the difficulties, we see the challenges. There is a certain sense of humanity in this city, which especially comes out when people are face to face. On social media, when you're alone, you can have any thoughts. And there's a lot of psychology research that actually when you're sitting around a table or around a circle or in a room, you're much less aggressive with the person than you're willing to be if you're online or on a phone or on email. This is actually psychology research. And a hack on that is if you sit on the same side of the table as somebody, they feel even less this thing to be aggressive with you, right? So if you're ever negotiating against somebody, sit on the same side as them. They'll feel, oh, I'm on the same. So metaphorically, I mean, physically you're on the same side of the table. Metaphorically, you feel this person is too close to me. I can see your body. I can sense your energy. I can see your face. It's harder for me to be aggressive or unreasonable or demanding, unfairly demanding, because that feedback is constant there, even between two human beings, right? Now, of course, some people it seems are immune to that kind of dynamics, but I'd say that's probably a small number. And I think most people are much more reasonable when they're face to face, which is why when we do public consultations, when you do sort of the sort of round table or the town hall meetings, those are not ideas necessarily invented just because there were no other communication tools. I think it also when people get together and discuss and debate and see each other, look into their eyes, I think they tend to behave differently. And today, with more online stuff, with more social media, we're kind of breaking a lot of those connections. And we kind of need to also find ways to bring that back. And I think if more people who are well off spend enough time in the same room,
Right.
understanding and listening and hanging out with people. I'm not even saying listen like, oh, you're a specimen on stage telling me about your poor life and I'm in the audience listening.
Yeah.
I said, let's hang out. Let's find ways to interact. You get things like, when you open up the streets or you've got public parks, truly public parks, the beach is a great place, right? You can have one rich kid, one poor kid, both are going to the same dirty water to play or playing on the same sand, right? I think when we create those spaces for people to come out and interact and listen to each other and be around each other, I think that's when humanity sort of has its greatest chance of, flourishing. And it doesn't require too much then over design, over regulation, rules, this, that. I think there's a decency in all of us. And we'll give more space to that if we are able to interact with others who are different from us or different from our own social background.
I think Marine Drive is also a great example of that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Only thing is, see, at the beach or a marina, you don't talk to others. You
Yes.
see,
Yes.
but you don't interact.
Yeah.
You get them into the same room where people are actually talking and understanding each other's experience and aspirations.
Right.
And then you realize that, look, people really want the same thing. And it's not like the poor people are angry about the rich. It's not like they want all your money and they want you to be on the street. Not at all. I mean, I think the poor people across the world to a large extent, but especially places like India, it's always amazing to me how safe we are as a city, as a country still. I mean, there are a lot of issues, of course. I'm not saying it's perfectly safe for everyone, but relative to what it could be, when I hear about, they've got countries out there where if you're well off, you can't walk on the streets because you're going to get mugged or shot or whatever. And this is a reality in many, many countries, right? House break-ins, carjacking is very common, even in some cities of India. And Bombay is not like that when it has got 52% people living in slums, right? So I think there are a lot of sparks of humanity which exist across the class, caste, gender, income divide. And we need to find ways to tap into that if you want to build a better society and a better future.
I think it also breaks those biases that we might have, that only poor people might
Yes,
commit crime, which is,
absolutely not
yeah.
true. Absolutely not true.
I think about safety. Mumbai is probably the only city in India where I would feel comfortable. I do travel at 2 at night sometimes if
Yeah,
I have a flight or anything like that. I don't have to send my link, my taxi cab link to my parents or my friends.
yeah,
Whereas in Delhi, anytime after 8 p.m., I will myself make sure I've sent it to three people,
yeah,
which is special for me, and that's one reason why I wouldn't want to move outside of Mumbai, because
yeah.
it's very
So
special.
it's still got that, right? It's
Yeah.
still got those special things. And this was true 30 years ago, 50 years ago also about Bombay. And
Yeah.
it is still largely true today.
Yeah.
Could it be better? Absolutely.
Yeah.
How do we make it better? That's the question.
Yes, definitely. You in your LinkedIn bio, you mentioned one question, which is how do we maximize happiness with minimal side effects?
With
Minimal side effects.
right.
And this is it's related to what you just said about reaching 60-70% of what we want. But everyone's wants are different. So how do we decide what's the upper boundary to those wants?
Well, look, there is no upper boundary
Hmm.
because there are people who have got so much more than they can ever need or consume. But money is then not about money anymore. It's about status. It's about prestige. It's about what rank you are on the Fortune 5, on the Forbes 50 list. So Forbes 400. So the thing is that really to wants there is no limit. I mean, Gandhi said, right? He said the world has got enough for everyone's needs, but
Not
not
for
enough for even one person's
greed.
greed,
Yes.
right? So so the moment we go into I want this, I want that, and of course now we put wants as need. I need my cup of coffee. No, you're not
Yeah.
going to die without a cup of coffee. It's not a need.
Yeah.
It's a want. Let's call it out. And I think there, so yeah, so needs can be wants can be endless. Needs are reasonably simple, right? But the needs, our wants and our greed really don't come from a physical space because you can't eat all the money, you can't eat food, or it comes from an emotional space, right? People that money and power represent something to them that they can show to others or use for others or even against others, right? So therefore, there's no limit to it. And at the same time, if we simplify, a lot of the happiest people in the world are, let's say, for example, monks, true monks, right? Not those who are a monk, but they've got wants and all. There are a lot of monks who have got nothing. They beg for food, they've got two sets of simple clothes, and they're extremely happy, very peaceful, always kind, always loving, always helpful. So, really, it's about a frame of mind that matters, right? It's not about what we have or don't have. It is entirely a frame of mind that determines how we behave, how we feel, and then, like, it's reflected in our own health.
Hmm.
Our mental health, of course, which now we talk a lot about, even our physical health is linked to our mental health, right?
Yep.
So why does India have so much diabetes and stress and hypertension and cardiac problems? Because we're not a happy people. And some of it comes down to wanting more, being jealous of they have got that, and being stressed about how do I get that. I think we need to reprogram our way of life also, which I'm very happy to see is also a global movement.
Hmm.
In fact, in many ways, I think India is behind the curve.
Behind the curve.
I mean, I honestly, I think I see a lot more of this in the Western countries now, done intelligently with thought. Not key. Traditionally, we did this, so I'll believe this. But really thinking more logically about it, scientifically about it, saying, why does it make sense to, where there's a minimalism movement.
Hmm.
It's an American movement, right? Minimalism. A lot of environmental sustainability is coming back to us from the European side.
Hmm.
We had it. It's not that we didn't have it. We had it probably before. And I'm not saying only India had it, because earlier all cultures were sustainable, right? Because you had no option.
Yeah.
But now, as the incomes are growing and the opportunity to be unsustainable presents itself, we are grabbing that opportunity. We are not saying, no, no, my tradition said, don't do this, don't do this. I will not do it. We are not saying no. Earlier, we didn't have to say no because there was no choice.
Yeah.
Now you have the choice, you're saying yes.
Yeah.
Then you're making things worse. Then we say, oh, but we used to be like this. But why are we not like that now? What changed? So, I think maybe it's a cycle. People have to go through it, then realize that this is not working, and then they come back to it. That's what the West has gone through. A lot of people in the West have gone through, not everybody yet. Maybe that's a cycle, but I think we can short circuit that cycle, speed it up, by becoming more aware of the world, becoming more aware of what works for us, and then seeing how do we replicate that in society at a city level, state level, national level. It's a long, tough journey, but I think we'll get there.
I have two questions here. One is, what what would you say in response to some comments or statements that, oh, minimalism etc. is very elitist? Second is, in response to the comment that, oh, US has had its fun, it's consumed like no one's business, and now it's realizing its mistake. Whereas, what about those in India where there's still many are still reaching the class income levels now? So why shouldn't they have their share of fun? I get concerned because the number of middle class, like people in the middle class, is just growing enormously in India, and if we consume the way the West does, the world is
It's finished.
finished.
Yeah.
But what do you say about the? Are we curbing people's like rights or what enjoyment, or what do you have to say to?
Uh, I mean, look, that's one way to look at it.
Huh.
But the point is, let's leave all that aside, right? Let's go back to first principles. What do people want? What will make people happier? What will make people healthier? What will make people enjoy their life more? Let's just design for that. Let's forget about who did what. Okay. If somebody else, forget about America, if I have a friend or if I have a neighbor who, worked very hard, sacrificed everything, didn't pay attention to his children, his family, his health, whatever, made lots of money. Now he's 65 and realizes, Arey, I wish I'd spent more time with my kids, and I wish, what will I do with all this wealth? I wish I'd made one third the money, but had more free time and lived my life differently. I'd be happier. Now, if I say I'm 35 and I'm 25 and I'm looking at this guy, if I want to follow his same journey, then is that wise for me? Am I being intelligent for myself? Or should I say, no, no, he did it. Why shouldn't I? I can do that. But all the other is say, yeah, look, that person made a mistake. Now they are regretting certain things that they have done. Let me understand that and change the trajectory of my life so I don't make the same mistake. Now, in some way, we want to say, no, I want to follow your footsteps because you walked in those footsteps. And today you have got so much disparity and you've got so much environmental degradation and all. I want to do exactly the same thing. And one day, 50 years from now, I will change my mind and reverse. I think that is the definition of being rather silly. So that's why, instead of getting caught up in definitions of what is minimalism or what is this or what is that, I say let's go back to first principles. Let's not put labels on it. Let's say, what do you need to be happy? Right? What sort of society will make us happier? What sort of culture will make us happier? What sort of way of life will make us happier? Because, look, this was something that hit me very hard. This was from a long time ago, 1998, I think. There's an article in Forbes or Fortune or Forbes magazine.
Okay.
It said 78% of the CEOs of Fortune 500 companies, I don't know how they got the data, but 78% of Fortune 500 CEOs were on mental health medication. And I remember this story, to the cover page article, right? From way back before the internet days almost. Now, you look at this and you say, if 78% of people who are amongst the most powerful and rich people in the world have to be on medication for mental health, is that something that all of us should be aspiring? Should all of us be aspiring for that job, right? Or do we need to rethink what it means to be a Fortune 500 company and to be the head of that company so that we build a culture where those people don't need to be on medication to have their job, right? So obviously something very wrong. And therefore, I think as India today, we need to evaluate what trajectory do we need, which will bring maximum happiness for the most maximum people, where nobody may get everything that they want, but it has to be an intelligent choice. Now, a lot of people, we argue about, and therefore I don't think it's something that can be driven and dictated by government, no matter how intelligent or wise they are. It has to come from people, because the moment people say, I want that, and the government says, no, no, you should be happy with this, people will find some way of doing that. That could mean immigration. It could mean breaking the rule. It could mean hiding stuff. It could mean doing things under different people's names. And we do all of that in India today, right? Because we want that. We're being told do this. So I think we need, and that's why, I feel that all our problems at the end of the day are some kind of ethical, mental, emotional, spiritual revolution is what we need. Because once we understand what we need to make ourselves happy, I think we can restructure that trajectory where we don't have to go through the mistakes of the others. We may end up with a much lower income level than other countries might, but we can also be much happier. And we have to decide what matters to us. Is it income and GDP, or is it happiness and well-being? I think the moment we make that decision, Bhairavi, I think the rest of the journey is clear. Because today you've got a certain group of decision makers, very powerful decision makers. whose attention is GDP and income and so on. And there are very few people who talk against that, and most people are either not able to, they don't have a voice at the table, or they just go ahead. Ah, उसने बोला है तो यही ठीक होगा, right? But I think that's actually the only decision we need to make. Do you value GDP or do you value health and well-being? The day we have a consensus on that, until the trajectory will change automatically, because you realize that a lot of things you do for GDP growth are bad for your health and well-being and irrelevant to your health and well-being, right? And then we'll find other ways to do things that are good for health and well-being, which may have no impact on GDP. Because GDP is only capturing, see, to understand, GDP is only capturing financial transactions. Okay?
Yep.
Today, you and I are sitting here. We are having a lovely conversation. You're not paying me for it. I'm not getting paid for it. Our interaction here does not contribute to GDP whatsoever.
Yes.
But if you were paying me for it, it would add to GDP. It's as ridiculous as that, right? So GDP is a manufactured notion. And in fact, Kuznets, who I just reading as writing, the reason I'm talking is this last night I was answering some questions on one of my WhatsApp groups, and I've studied this before, but Kuznets, who was the economist in the 1930s, who came up with the idea of GDP, said that GDP just captures economic transactions between parties. It is not related to well-being of society, and it should not be used to equate well-being of society, and therefore it should not be the basis on which policy is made. Right? And this was his warning in the 1930s. And 190 years later, we're still ignoring it. We're on that rat race where we want to maximize GDP, and half your newspaper page is like, will GDP be 3.3, 6.3% or 6.7% or 7%? How does it matter? It actually doesn't.
So, what would your ideal vision of India be? How would you see the systems?
At some level, my ideal system would be, achieving the promise of the Constitution of India. I think each of the people who wrote the Constitution had their own flaws and weaknesses. I think collectively we are a very intelligent group of people, right? They may or may not have fully understood the realities of India, and that's why the implementation of the Constitution has been so weak and so checkered in many ways. The promises here, the realities here, but we definitely had intellect was there. But India is a complex country. But if we can, I think if we can get people to, live and let live. Everyone says, as long as I'm kind of okay, I let you be okay. We get rid of the anger, animosity, biases. Everyone has the determination to work hard and do something productive for themselves and society. A lot of people still want the easy way out. They want to make money by cheating or by doing the least possible. At some level, it seems like that is getting worse and worse, right? People want to be lazy, but they have entitled, they want this and that. If people understand that, your every action and non-action has consequences. You can't blame others for things. And that comes back to our discussion on karma, right? There are consequences. You do something, there will be consequences, good and bad. If you don't do something, there'll be consequences, right? So if you should have done something and you don't, there'll be consequences to that. I think if people really start to internalize these basic ideas, which really have been part of our, when you take any religion in India, or in the world actually, all these ideas are part of the founding principles or the basic principle of every religion, right? So we don't have to say one religion is better than the other, and all of them say the same thing as far as these things go. I think if all of us can just internalize that and realize that, we are dependent on each other, I think that's the last one I would say, that none of us can exist independently of others. At a spiritual level, that's the idea of Buddhism. But, I say, and you know this, I ask in a lot of my workshops, I say, okay, can you think of 100 people to be grateful to, or 10 people? And most people say, yeah, sure, my parents, my teachers, say 100 people you're grateful to. Some will think, few hands will go up. I say, how about 1,000 people to be grateful to? And very rarely a hand goes up. And I say, what about 1,000,000 people you're grateful to? How can I be grateful to 1,000,000 people, right? But you think about it, I mean, just sitting here today, having this lovely conversation with you, how many people have been involved in making it happen? Both of us traveled here. We've got a lovely team that set up this space. People have built these amazing cameras and microphones and technology, which is, hundreds of years of innovation, millions of people involved just in that, just so that we can be here having this phenomenal conversation, right? So I think, when we understand the interconnectedness that we have with each other, and, when people say, oh, boycott China, and they realize that they could not go 2 hours of their life without something that was made by Chinese input, right? So what are we angry about, right? We are so interdependent, and I think if we start understanding those things in India, I think we can easily become, in this generation, extremely sustainable, extremely happy, healthy, prosperous. May not be in the GDP ranking, but probably that you could go to every Indian and say, "Are you happy?" Yes. Are you healthy? Yes. Do you feel you're well off? Yes. I think we can achieve that in very, very little time, because we have a lot of the raw material is still there. It just has to be shaped, has to be bought out, and some of the negative ideas and tendencies need to be kind of wound down. I think that's very doable in India today, and the world actually.
If you had to paint a picture, like describe a city in that India versus in present day India, what are the differences in like wealth distribution, in maybe policy? If you can mention some specifics, it'll be very interesting.
Sure. See, I don't think we'll ever have economic equality where everyone has equal money or equal wealth, right? Because people have got different histories and different capabilities.
Mm.
But the point is, you need to have a certain minimum line and make sure everyone is above that. Okay. And that's not just by income, because if you say, look, suppose you say 20,000 rupees should be enough for somebody to live comfortably. But if they're going to spend 18,000 rupees on basic needs, how does that matter? It doesn't help, right? So I think my vision for a city would be you have a certain pretty nice, comfortable minimum threshold, and everyone's quality of life is at least above that, right? That means that they get healthy and nutritious food. May not be the fancy, obviously not the fanciest food or more than enough food, but enough food to be healthy. I think most of us overeat anyways, right? So enough food to be healthy and good quality healthy food. I think everyone should have a decent house to live in. Okay, what are they pay? They own it, they rent it, whatever. They have a decent house to live in. We have a safe society because the police work well, the courts work well, and that people are generally sort of looking out for each other, but also subduing their own tendency to do something wrong to somebody else, right? And for those people who have that tendency and act on it, there is a police, there are neighbors, there are citizens who are strong enough and brave enough to step in and not just feel scared for their own safety and let abuse happen, and take videos of it, right?
Yeah.
Uh, I would definitely want basic infrastructure to be good. So our water supply today is fairly good, but it doesn't reach everybody. Waste management would be a big one. So, yes, we will have waste workers and their working conditions will not be great compared to the kind of work you and I do. But, can we give them basic facilities? Can we treat them well? Can we give them good health care? Pay them well for the job they do? And as we know, when LA had a strike of sanitation workers, in 5 days the city was crap. So you say, you can send all your doctors home for 5 days. Most of us would be all right. You can send all your lawyers home for 5 days. The world would be just fine.
Yes.
All your engineers could take a 5-day holiday, no problem at all. All our social workers could take a 5-day holiday, which would be okay. You have all your sanitation workers and base pickers take a holiday for 5 days. A good, well-run city comes to its knees,
Yes.
right? And today, our waste workers are absolutely the worst treated, worst paid. They can't even live in a slum. They have to find their own slum outside a slum because the slum dwellers won't let them live amongst them, right? So, I would want people to appreciate what others do, and to understand how complex it is to run a city, which goes back to the thing of interconnection. I think if everyone did their work honestly, our infrastructure would be much better. Our public service would be much better, and therefore you won't have the kind of roads that we do, and the kind of flooding that we do, and the kind of land use that we do, and of course a city with a lot more nature in it.
Oh, yes.
And people say, "Where's the space in Bombay?" And I say, "Look, we create a lot of land in Bombay. I don't mean reclamation and what's happening today, but we are building multi-story buildings for living, working. We are building flyovers and bridges for driving. So we are creating new land for living, working, and driving. We could create new land for green spaces. Put green spaces above the road. Put it underground. There are all sorts of interesting engineering. I mean, we're blessed that the kind of technology and science that the world has today is unbelievable, right? Can we use that in a way that is collaborative? Or is every person thinking, how do I improve my life? How do I maximize the value of this plot of land? How do I throw these people out so I can get that? Unfortunately, that's where we are stuck. And that's really the change that we need.
I have so many tangents I can go on right now, but I'll pick the one on going deeper into spirituality or ethics.
Sure.
What do you think it's going to take in terms of like actions, whether it's regulations, whether it's education system, or at whatever level you think changes are required, for people to actually question what they need to be happy and build that as a part of their growth?
That's a good question. It's a tough one because so many things could happen and so many things could be done, right? I think the education system definitely can play a role, but it has to be done intelligently. Because what tends to happen is, see, spirituality. What we understand, what is commonly understood, is religion, right? And religious practices, religious beliefs. Now, those are derived from spiritual idea, but they don't necessarily always correctly represent spiritual ideas, right? So our religions also ultimately have become political tools over hundreds or thousands of years, and in many ways they've been shaped, altered, and corrupted also. So, when you say what can the education system do around spirituality, I say it would be great if they did, but then there'll be a lot of argument about what is the right idea, what is the wrong idea. This book said this, that guru said that, this religion said this. So the practical issue is how do we reach consensus on even what are spiritual ideas, right? That's a big one because we all are coming at it from often very different spaces. But I think there's scope over there. Even if you do some minimum basic and talk about it, not just STEM and technology and all, but talk about human values, talk about gratitude, about oneness, do some basic, can people have some basic understanding of different religions? I mean, when you get to finer ideas, it becomes more contentious. But a lot of basic education is simple. I mean, if you teach the 10 commandments, there's no debate around that. Now, whether people follow it or not in Christian countries is a different matter. But today, if you teach in a Hindu school, also if you teach these are the 10 commandments, and hey, you know what? By the way, they're exactly what the Bhagavad Gita tells you, right? You start seeing those. You start. So I think the education system can play a role. Um, I think we need a lot of people who. There's a saying. I think this is by Swami Chinmayanand,
Okay.
and he said when the world is. I mean, I'm paraphrasing very badly, but he basically said when there's a lot of wrongdoing happening in the world, those who are good have to be, he said violently good, but what he meant is they have to be extra good, right? They cannot hide and say, I will be good and quiet and do it in my private life, but I will not talk about it. I will not talk to others about it. Let them be who they are, right? So and this comes back to that there are, I think, a lot more people who have got deeper ethical values, etc. But either they feel too scared to speak up, or they feel it's not my place, or they don't want to be judged or misjudged or abused. So I think, people who want to see the right thing, I think, I'll say I think we have to be a lot more fearless
Yeah.
about standing up for the right thing, standing up for others. When people sit around and when they're videographing, when they're taking a video of somebody being beaten up or abused,
Yeah.
it's not like they would do that. They're good people,
Yeah.
most of them in the audience, right? They're fearful.
Hmm.
I think that fear, and somebody said about fear is the only thing we need to fear, right?
Yeah.
It took me a while, like, what is this rubbish? But over many years, actually, I said, yeah, actually, that's true. And to me, even at a personal level, I think overcoming fear is probably my biggest challenge today because there is a lot of fear because, you want to protect what you have, you want to protect those around you.
Yeah.
And society, some elements in society can be extremely vicious, as we see, physically, emotionally, verbally, and so on. So how to be fearless, the right way. I think that's something that all of us need to learn and practice. Um, yeah, I don't know if that answers your question.
What would enable such a mindset? Is it movies? Is it making, like, I know there are a lot of
Yeah.
movies, especially in the South, where they showcase this one citizen who has just taken it on themselves to just fight. Even Gajni, to that
Yeah.
extent, the actress, she's the hero of the film basically because she's fought against evil at the cost of her own safety. But that fundamental fear of safety, of speaking the truth, but then being harmed by corrupt folks is very real.
Yeah.
So how do you?
So, I mean, movies have been made about such heroes forever. Stories have been there forever. The first movies, it's Superman and this, that coming out not so long back, right? Why does it not have the impact? Because we don't relate to those people,
Hmm.
right? We say it's a movie.
Yeah.
We say they are some special human being. I am not that special.
Yeah.
They don't have kids. They don't have this. They don't have that. We made a lot of excuses.
Yeah.
If I had to come back, I mean, to me, at some level, the motivation comes back to deeper, actually, spiritual studies. Okay, so I'll just go into that a little bit, and I think if people believe a different religion, they'll find similar stories in their religion also.
Yeah.
Because all religions have these stories. Uh, what is the basis for being fearless? Now, if you look at the Bhagavad Gita, when Krishna is on the battlefield and he sees all his teachers and elders on the other side, and he says, I don't want to fight this war.
Arjuna.
Arjun, sorry. Arjun said, I don't want to fight
Yes,
this
yes.
war. What did I say?
Krishna.
Krishna said. So Krishna is there, and Arjun said, I don't want to
Yeah.
fight this war, right? What does Krishna really tell him? He says, look, one is it's your duty to fight, you're a warrior.
Right.
Okay, chalo, that's one angle. He says that, if you don't fight, it's not like the war will not happen. It's not like bad things will not happen. Bad things are already happening. So it's your duty to make sure that good things happen. And then last he says, look, all these people are going to die one day anyways. You're also going to die one day anyways. It's about today or 10 years or 20 or 50 years from now, right? Now people say, yeah, but it's okay, I'll die 30 years from now. I don't want to die today, right? But the question, then you get into the deeper issue of, understanding what's your karma and what's your dharma and what is your duty in this world, right? I think till we don't internalize some of those ideas, we'll always find excuses to not do something. Because as long as it is our emotions or even our intellect that say you should do this as the right thing, we'll always find excuses for that. But I think the deepest part of us really is our spirit, it's our soul. And whether we connect with it or not, whether we understand it or not, it is with us, it is talking to us all the time. And if you're able to cultivate that voice through studying philosophy and spirituality, practicing it in small ways, then making it bigger and bigger and bigger. And I think ultimately being very honest with ourselves on where we are failing. You don't have to advertise it to the world where you're making mistakes, right? But we tend to hide it from ourselves also.
Yeah.
And we do it at a collective, at a national level, and we do it at an individual level. And that's very hard. But if you're able to be honest with ourselves about our weaknesses, our failures, and if you're able to study sort of ideas that really set a very high benchmark, I think we are then able to find a pathway there. And somebody may go faster, somebody may go slower.
Right.
There could be left and right turns. That's okay. Point is to keep moving towards that. And then, sort of, you really look at it, then there are three things that you want, right? And they always say you have your teaching that you follow. It doesn't have to be a religious book, but some teaching, some philosophy.
Right.
You need some sort of teacher who's not necessarily a guru who wears certain clothes and all, but somebody who look up to the teacher, who understand that I can, teach you, etc. And you need a sangh, you need a group of fellow travelers, right? And today, oftentimes, we don't have spiritual sanghs because in the workplace or even in the academic spaces, it's uncool to talk about these things, right? We're all scientific, we're all technical, we're all data-based, whatever. And then in our personal spaces, we don't necessarily find people who think alike or who are alike. If today you go to a temple or you go to a this thing and all, you may not connect to the people there. So they maybe you're in the same space doing the same thing, but you're not really a sangh. So how do we bring, sort of these sort of ethical, moral, spiritual ideas into day-to-day discussion everywhere, right? I mean, church-state separation is a good idea in some senses. It's also not a good idea in some senses, right? So we need to be able to have these conversations and people to apply them in day-to-day life. And I think that will give us the strength to say no when needed, to understand things more intelligently, not get carried away by biases and sort of generalizations. And I think that can happen through the workspace, through the home space, through the school, through community groups. Kind of what I hope we'll create through something like Mumbai Doughnut Colab. It needs to be everywhere, honestly, and that's the only way we get there faster to that kind of ethical. And again, I don't say equitable because people say everyone will be equal. No, but where at least everyone treats each other well. I'll just say one more thing on that. There's a book called 12 Years a Slave.
Okay.
It's about a guy in the US who was taken into slavery and then was freed. And he makes a very interesting comment. One of the slave owners that he belongs to was an elderly man who he says was really nice. He would let his slaves read. He would serve enough food. He would give them a break. If they were ill, they could take 2, 3 days off to get better, right? And he said that even though this guy had slaves, he was so blind to the institution that are all around him. It's like a fish doesn't know they're in water, right? But he said his behavior, he said if all slave owners were like him, it would take away most of the sting of slavery. So one is you say slavery is bad, you should abolish slavery. Of course, that's the best way. He said even within that institution, if you cannot abolish it, as a single person, you can treat your slaves in a way where 50, 60, 80% of the pain and this thing is gone. I see our role in society something like that. We may not be able to change all the norms of society overnight, right? But I think as individuals, we can make life better for others. We can reduce pain, we can increase happiness, we can increase well-being. And somewhere then gradually, down the road, that becomes the norm. It becomes a movement. It becomes a norm. And look, we made a lot of progress in the last 50, 100, 200 years, right? On everything. You look at gender, you look at, caste, you look at religious equality, you look at colonization, you look at. So I think, we are moving in the right direction. I think most things are actually moving in the right direction, I feel. But with climate change and so on, we'll have to move forward much, much faster because that will add its own challenges which we have not faced before. The environmental challenge has been relatively a minor part of modern human history.
Right.
All our problems mostly have been created by ourselves. I think now with climate becoming a multiplier force, we'll have to think a lot harder about what we want, what we need, what we can have.
You were talking about Mumbai Donut Collab. I'll also come to that, but in your other work, which is where you consult early stage startups, they're also doing a lot of good work. We got exposed to it because of the Leap Fellowship that you ran. Um, what are some of the most exciting solutions that they're working on that you feel need to be scaled up? But scaled up, how much? Like, again, there's a limit.
I mean, look, I think good ideas should be scaled up to 100%. Okay. And yeah, no, thanks for bringing that up. I think the companies that I get to work with are just phenomenal at what they do. About 8 or 9 who we actively work with, a few others not as much. But they're trying very hard, and a lot of the forces are actually against them in many ways due to current regulations, dominant players, how investors think, etc. So it's a tough journey, and
Dominant players as in bigger businesses?
as established businesses who may not want to give up space or who benefit from the way things are today, so they don't want necessarily to see that change to happen, right?
Right.
So, I really salute each of them, whether they're successful or unsuccessful, ultimately financially and all. I salute them for their effort and for their intelligence and their patience. So few of them which are, and I'd say, they're all cities, they're all urban businesses, right?
Yeah.
So for example, Respire does, high quality air quality monitoring. The best sensors, I think, in the country, using a lot of data. And then if you let them do what they want, that is, if the builder community and the government or the municipality all get out of the way, they will give you very high quality data on air pollution levels, real time, so you can start making changes to how construction is done, how automobiles are managed, etc., to
Right.
improve, air quality.
Right.
Right. Urja does highly energy efficient air conditioning systems. And I think, today India is planning to add 80 gigawatts of coal powered energy, new capacity, right, in the next 10 years because we need so much electricity.
Yeah.
And yet, air conditioning, which is a huge energy user, is the amount of innovation is like this much, right? So centralized air conditioning, doing structural cooling. So the technologies like, structural cooling and using geothermal energy and using different construction materials. These require a lot of changes to how regulations work, consumers, customers behave, developers behave, etc. But every building, I think India should not give permission for any structure to be built which is not a LEED platinum equivalent. That should be the law. That should be the minimum. Better than that, no problem, right? Because we can't afford to have. And people say, but it's expensive. I say, and everyone say, right? What is the cost of not doing this? Is much, much greater. It's just that you don't see it, you don't count it in rupees. But ultimately you do, because when you have heat island effect and people are spending through their noses for air conditioning and people are not able to work or are dying out of heat stroke, that is a cost to the country.
Yeah.
Right? So energy efficient buildings, energy efficient air conditioning, amazing technologies there. FluxGen does smart water monitoring. You can save a lot of water. We say, what is a water crisis? I say, a water crisis is a water mismanagement crisis. India has got more than enough water for everything. But we've got to change our agriculture patterns and we've got to start reusing water and treating it carefully, using it carefully. So he does, these smart, this thing. Eco Sattva and Vermi Gold are phenomenal in the waste management services, composting, circular economy stuff. I mean, if we allowed them to work in every city and every campus, I think we'd have clean cities, very little waste, lot of circular economy. And actually, it would not, it would be far cheaper for the country if we allowed that to happen than if we don't. It requires a lot of effort and behavior change also. Vision Earthcare, phenomenal wastewater treatment using nature-based solutions. Look at how do we make cities green and clean and better water, better climate adaptation. Living Greens in Jaipur, I think top-notch rooftop urban agriculture company. and we're working with a lot of new products on how to bring urban agriculture into the city. I mean, in Bombay, people say there's no space. I think Bombay can have hundreds of acres, thousands of acres of farms in the city on not just so rooftops is one, but right outside here you got the Western Express Highway, right? It's 35 kilometers wide road. Build a structure over it, put farms on top of it. Down you've got shade, you can walk, cycle much more easily. When you look down from your windows, you see a nice garden or a farm instead of the road with all the noise. So you take care of air pollution, noise pollution, heat island effect, greenification. You get high quality, organic, healthy food without wastage, without long transportation links. Probably will be cheaper than what you're buying in the market today. So you can get a lot of benefits through something like urban agriculture, right? But it has to be, infrastructure scale, not somebody's rooftop and somebody's garden, right? That will not do too much. Yeah, and we got Gulf toilets, which are smart, intelligent toilets. They can have amazing public toilets. Municipality won't give you the space, and they won't give you water connection, and they won't pay you on time. So they struggle as a business. But yeah, these are some of the companies. They're just phenomenal at what they do. Yeah.
What do you think? You already mentioned the barriers, but what will it work to resolve these barriers, and what will we need to enable these companies? Because if I take one example, right, I think one of the companies you work with, don't they use enzymes for, like, say, toilet
Sorry,
cleaner or
yeah.
something?
Organica Biotech, they
Mhm.
use their biotech company, the enzymes for waste degradation
Right.
and also for agriculture improvement. Yeah. Yeah.
So long back, my first job was with this company called EcoPro, which I guess you know of, Dr.
Yeah.
Tangle. So they used to use effective microorganisms. EM was a solution for cleaning, and you can use it for cleaning the floor, to clean toilet, and at the microbes actually eat up the sewage rather than just masking it with a smell.
Absolutely.
But then you have these MNCs, whether it's PNG, all of these, who are marketing just disinfectants for everything, which are just chemicals, which further go and add to the pollution. So when they are marketing it so vigorously, and that's the mindset people have, how do you bring up solutions which are always on the smaller scale, but perhaps more holistic?
So that's the hard part, right?
Yeah.
I mean, what's the solution? The direction can come from probably from two or three spaces. You can have citizens who become more aware. So now today we know these things, which few years ago we also didn't know, right? We learned. Now you may have changed what you use at home, and now you will talk to a few people, and it'll spread organically, right? But if you can get people who have got the money and the voice to reach out to many more people, for example, one thing I would love to see is if celebrities use their power more responsibly,
Yep.
right? I mean, I'll say it, it's a tragedy. It's shameful, the kind of thing that people will endorse just because they get paid some money, right? I mean, I don't know. And, that's those things where you say, look, how much more money do you need? And I'm sure they've got their reasons. And I say, what would make you do that, right? So, so citizens, common, regular people like us, I mean, you're doing it through this podcast. So congratulations to you. You'll reach, I'll teach a class of 30 people. You will reach hopefully 3,000 and 30,000 and many more people with this conversation. So, I think today, regular people like us who have now learned something new, we can share it. Obviously, you would hope that government regulations step in,
Yeah.
but then government has its own priorities or its own sort of, sometimes they're influenced by vested interests, so they may or may not be able to step in. I mean, they can, they often don't, but okay, they've got their own issues and their own restrictions also. Investors are another community. If investors stop being so scared about their money, and you got impact investors who are a little less scared, at least in theory, they're willing to put their money behind ventures that a regular investor or a VC would not. But if you get a lot more such people, and that's what I say, people who have got that wealth and power. See, wealth and power is not a problem. It depends on who has it and how they use it.
Yeah.
Right? If in some ways having concentrated wealth and power may actually be a good thing, because if those people get onto the right idea, they can make wonders happen in a short period of time. It's just the way they've acquired their wealth and power often mean they will not see things differently.
Right.
That's a different matter. So I think, but there are people who are, and I meet people who are running industries which are harmful to the environment, but they're also investing in an impact investment fund. So they know that, look, somewhere I know what I'm doing is not the right thing, but I've got employees, I've got legacy, I've got family, I've got shareholders. I can't just tomorrow say this is not good, shut it down, right? So sometimes they also feel like they have to do this, but then they try and make up in some other way. So I think different people are doing, but I think a lot of people, so government could do a lot more. Common citizens could do a lot more. The rich and powerful with a strong voice, they can do definitely a lot more. Investors can do a lot more. And I think, I think businesses, if they get together, see what happens, right? Let's say you've got five important players in a sector and they're competing with each other. Now, we always talk about the benefits of competition. It creates innovation, reduces price, all that stuff, and that's all true. But hyper competition is also bad because it stops us from taking long-term decisions.
Yeah.
It stops us from being able to do the right thing sometimes, right? It creates a very sort of self-preservation, aggressive, like win at all cost kind of behavior. But today, if imagine this, you brought up a certain example. Imagine your top five or top eight FMCG companies get together and say, you know what, all these detergents we are selling are bad for the environment. They're actually bad. They could be bad for health also. Let's say in 4 years, we will all transition to sort of good quality micro-based biological products. But you know what's going to happen? The price is probably going to go up a little bit. Our sales may go down a little bit because of that, but that's okay. Let's stick with it, right? This would be called collusion. So it's illegal. But imagine if they could do good collusion. You could make that change, right? There's nothing saying that they cannot. And if the government says yes, only these kind of products are allowed, so that tomorrow Manas cannot go and say, oh, they exited this market, I will now start selling chemicals. So then the regulation has to come in and it has to be enforced, right? So if we can create that sort of, and that's why the collective action becomes very important, right? You still compete, but compete on something that is positive. Don't let competition take you to a space where you're doing things that are bad. And of course, the best examples we have that are like tobacco and big oil and all that. But a lot of industries today, I think if you look at the agricultural food industry, if you had good quality standards, I think most food and beverage executives probably should be in jail by now. So I'm not advocating that we do that and send them to jail. All I'm saying is that if people can get together and set high standards, supported by government and regulation, there are many reasons why it doesn't happen, but if that could happen, that was by magic wand, I think that would be, I think it's very doable.
It ties to a talk you had given, which I watched, which was on ethical leadership. How the leaders in these big companies, if they have the values to take these tough decisions, then a lot is possible.
Yeah, and let me just add one more angle to it, right? So even if the CEOs and the CFOs and the CXOs of all these companies got together, the problem today is that the moment they make this decision and they say, we're going to do this thing which is good for society, good for the environment, but our revenue and our profits are going to get hit, the investors are going to stand up and say, you're
Absolutely.
out. Manas, will you do this job? Yes, I will. All right, you're in. Please continue business as usual. So you also need the investor side to support it. So I forgot to mention that earlier. That is unfair. CEOs say, my hands are tied. What can I do? So everyone in some way feel their hands are tied. We all are complaining about the same things. Investor will say, but I got money. I'm a fund manager. I've got retirees. I've got corporates. If I say I'm going to give you 11% return instead of 14, they will give money to the next guy. They'll go to Bhairavi and say, Bhairavi, you invest in the oil and gas company, they make us the most money, right? And Bhairavi will say yes. So everyone needs to take that call to become more responsive. So it's government, it's investors, it's businesses, it's consumers. We have to accept that there isn't a free meal. We can't just keep buying the cheapest garbage, which will then break and we throw and buy more. We have to also change our consumption patterns, right? So yes, I think ethical leadership is extremely important. I actually think that, again, limited interaction and what I've heard and seen, I think most senior leaders in their personal life are far more ethical, far more conscientious than they are in their work because they also feel that their hands are tied and they have to compete and they have to win. And if they don't, somebody else will do it. And therefore, if their ethical level is here, they operate at this level because the industry or the laws and the rules actually bring people down. There are some leaders who are not there. But I would like to believe that at the individual level, now today that gets reported as greenwashing. You're talking this, but you're acting this. And that's true. It is greenwashing. But we have to also understand why people greenwash. Sometimes there's lack of knowledge. Sometimes it is pressure. I would like to believe that most people in the world, if they were completely free to make decisions, I think they would make much better decisions today for themselves and for others. And somewhere a system of what capitalism has become and what competition has become and what money has become, it is actually pulling us down to a much lower level of behavior than people would if they were let free. I mean, that's my take. I think people disagree with that sometimes. I would like to give people benefit of the doubt because I've seen amazing people doing fairly not so nice things.
I know someone in Unilever who's brilliant when it comes to sustainability, very passionate, but the same concerns of shareholders. If tomorrow Unilever takes a decision and shareholders are going to back out because in the short term it might cause them a loss.
Yeah.
Whereas I know of another company called MAS Holdings, which manufactures apparel for Nike, Lululemon, Victoria's Secrets. They're a family run business. I mean, they started off as a family. They don't have shareholders. They really have guts. They take some really bold and ambitious decisions, and it's very impressive to see that.
So
But yeah,
there you go, right?
mm,
And I would like to believe that those folks at whichever companies have would like to actually be in that situation.
exactly.
But now, they've had a certain career, there's certain expectation, there's certain, what they built a life around themselves or even an identity around themselves, where they often cannot step out and say, I will not do this anymore. And the system doesn't allow them to be as ethical as they would personally want to be.
Mm.
And I think that's sad because that stress itself can be very problematic. And we should not think that business leaders don't have stress or don't have emotional issues. And I think a lot of it comes from this that you believe one thing, but you have to behave in a different way. I mean, that can tear you apart internally. And I think a lot of that is, so whether it's poor people and young people or it's old people and rich people, I think a lot of the drivers of stress today is the same that people have to live, to conform to certain norms of behavior, which they may no longer believe in, but the expectations on them or the expectations of themselves don't allow them to walk out. And that's where fear also comes in. There's another way that fear keeps us tied to suboptimal situations because we're too scared to step away from what we have built, what is comfortable, what is normal, what is acceptable.
What do you think will unlock the possibility of people being free and to make decisions? Uh,
The simple answer, but it's also a very deep answer. So one of my philosophy teachers, he said, I asked him some similar question, and he said, "Look, people learn through pain or through wisdom, right?"
Yeah.
I think in many ways we are seeing the pain coming a full circle, right? A lot of the movements today are because we have been through the pain, and people say, "What's a better way?" Right? So there's a backlash against the pain. Um, And coming back to what we started with, do we want to go through a whole cycle of pain and then realize, hey, there's a better way? Or do we apply our wisdom and our collective thinking and our ancient knowledge and looking at the history of people around the world and say, we don't want to make those mistakes, right? Let's short circuit that. Let's do it better. Today, you've got more and more people retiring when they're 50 from very senior roles, wanting to go and, do philosophical studies or, become not become a monk, but, start living that kind of life or really simplifying, right? If you're 25 and you want to walk that journey, it's probably a lot harder because you're the odd one out, and even your family will say, "What are you doing? You should be earning this, that." I think people need to find the courage, and I think the way you get that courage is if you need less.
Mm.
If I need less stuff, if I need less validation from others, if I need less praise from others, each of those, as reduce my needs, it gives me the courage to do something more, right? Because I've got less to lose. I think our sense that we have so much to lose, and not just physically, not just materially or financially, but emotionally, socially, etc. I think that keeps us also tied to a predetermined path or a sort of a path that is shaped by so many forces that it is actually not shaped by us at all. I think if people can learn to live with a lot less, so you got the book, what is it? Basically, I forget the title. It has the F word in the title, but it's basically about that how to not give a damn
Yeah,
about
yeah,
what
yeah,
people
yeah,
think,
yeah.
right?
Mark Manson's.
I forget who it is, but
Yeah, yeah,
yeah, all these ideas that the courage to be disliked,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
Now, those are ideas that can be used responsibly or irresponsibly.
Right.
I say I don't give a care, I don't give a damn about what people think, and I'll say all the stupid and rude and mean thing. That is, I'm misusing that idea. But if I don't want social validation and I can speak the truth, I can sort of do what I think is right, I can be honest regardless of who I'm talking to. I think that's tremendous power, and that's tremendous at some level peace that comes if one can exercise that. If I'm scared of losing my job because I need 8 lakhs a month to survive, I'm going to be extremely scared about losing my job. If I can get by on 80,000 a month, I'm not that scared because I know if I'm a generally intelligent person, earning 8 lakhs a month is hard, but earning 80,000 is much easier, right? I won't be that scared. I don't have to do stuff that I disagree with just to keep my job, right? So I think that, and that's the idea of minimalism, right? People think of it very physically, like just give away your stuff. No, I mean, our traps are here. Our traps are our mind. It's our emotions that dictate how we behave. So we have to minimalize at all levels, and then I think that opens us up to doing things that we otherwise cannot, or to take up opportunities that we otherwise might not feel that we cannot do. A lot of people say, I can't work in the social sector because I need to earn at least this much, right? And that's fair. They have built a certain life. I'm not arguing with that. All I'm saying is, if they were able to find a way they could live on half of that, they would find many more opportunities and interesting opportunities for them to work and live and so on.
And I guess this ties into how the system is also designed, because let's say I want to spend less, I want less. Then I have, anytime there's a craving, Blinkit, let's say food, right? I resort to food sometimes for comfort, often for comfort. So like Blinkit, Zepto, they're right there.
Yeah.
Whereas earlier I would have to go to a shop.
Correct.
It's just extremely difficult to not to control yourself then.
I mean, look, if you stop buying stuff
Huh.
and if you stop working very, very hard, you're terrible for the economy.
Yeah.
All right. So if you want to buy more stuff, if you kill yourself working harder to earn more so you can spend more,
Yeah.
and then on top of that, you take a loan so that you have to keep working hard to pay off that loan, you're great for the economy,
Yeah.
right? So if you start cycling and say, I will only work 8 days a week, 8 days a month and earn enough so I can buy basic food. And if you move into a one-bedroom apartment, you're terrible for the economy. You'll be great for yourself. You'll be very, very happy. And that's why, our economy sort of messages us saying this is what you want, and our advertising is there and marketing is there. But look, I mean, the modern world, to my mind, is basically making us lazy, spoiled brats.
Yeah.
Right?
And not actually happy. Like the short term, I'll be happy.
And then unhappy.
Yeah.
I tell my kids, I say, when I wanted to watch a movie at your age, I had to go to first I had to wait for the video library to have the cassette, which would be often months or years after it got released somewhere else. I had to go there, इसने नहीं cassette किसी और के पास है, come back tomorrow नहीं उसने नहीं दिया, अरे I just gave it to somebody else. You just keep going back and waiting, then you put the damn cassette in and the print is bad or it gets stuck in your. That's what we had to do to watch a movie, right? Today you want it on demand, and if the thing goes round and round for 3 seconds, you get irritated, saying, "What is this?" I'm like, we're becoming spoiled brats, and it's not just about them and me. I mean, today I feel irritation if the internet is not working fast, and we get irritated, right? We forget. We very easily adapt to more comfort, and then forget what it used to be like, right? I remember a time we used to spend 3 hours trying to dial up to an internet connection just to see sort of a two-line message that a friend had sent, right? And you sit there 2 hours, and we go at 2 o'clock in the morning to a friend's place because the parents should be asleep, and the phone lines are all nobody. And if somebody calls in the middle of your internet, the connection would break. This was 1993, 1994. That's what we did for internet connection, and we lived, and we were happy, and we were fine, right? And today you can't imagine, where's Wi-Fi? No Wi-Fi. What's going on? So I think, yeah. I think I think people have to rethink what really matters to them and then see how they can, minimalize. That doesn't mean that you have to stop working or have to stop earning. I would say, look, if you're happy earning, you have a good job, make your 8 lakhs, live on 80,000, give 7 lakhs to charity. A lot of good stuff you can do in the world, right? I'm not suggesting that means everyone becomes lazy and stops working. In fact, just on this, in the same book, Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning, he talks about his experience at the Auschwitz and the concentration camps, right? And he said there are three things that motivate people. You've got pleasure, which is basically money. You've got power, and you've got purpose. And people who are driven by purpose don't care as much about power or pleasure, right? Similarly, people who care about power, often they don't care about money. They may need money to increase their power, but often they're not even spending their money on themselves, right? Because their thing is power. And those who want pleasure, they don't care about power, purpose, nothing. They just want money. Paisa aana chahiye. I don't care whether I can influence. So I think, if we can cultivate, and look, every person has got all three. It's not like 100, 0, 0, right? Purpose may be more towards our society, to our friends, to our family, to myself. But very few people have a purpose that is bigger. But many people do also, right? If we can cultivate a society where people have a healthier distribution between our focus towards pleasure, power, and purpose, and gradually we are able to change it more and more towards purpose, I think that changes the nature of society. Then you get into feedback loops. Because when I see good behavior, and it's actually biological, when we see other people doing something good, we are more inclined to do good things ourselves. And a lot of smart communication tactics use these, right? So if you actually read, the great book called Influence by Mario something. And he talks about some of these things. And actually, when we study even spirituality and we study the brain structure and all, you've actually got nerves that take feedback loops and they trigger muscles to behave to imitate somebody else. And that's why when you're surrounded by people who are compassionate, you will become more compassionate. When you're driving on the Bombay Pune Expressway and you see everyone is sticking to a lane using indicator, you will start doing that because we take feedback from our environment and that changes our own behavior. And then, of course, our behavior then is feedback to somebody else and their behavior changes, right? It's a slow process. But if more and more, people start thinking and talking that way, and I'm seeing a lot more, right? I mean, 10 years ago, this conversation would be impossible. It wouldn't have happened, right? We wouldn't be talking about spirituality and we wouldn't be talking about ethical leadership and we wouldn't be talking, it would be a very small fringe conversation happening somewhere. I mean, I'm amazed at how much has changed in the last 10, 12 years. I'm really, really amazed. So I think there is noise around it, some good, some bad, people figure it out. I'm very optimistic about the long term. I mean, I think the amount of change, positive change we'll see in the next 20 to 40 years, I think is going to be beyond the expectations of almost anyone. Because when you have that S-shaped growth for a long time, you feel nothing is happening, right? But that's a ground building stage. Then you start seeing small change. I think we are there. And I think now we're going to see an acceleration of responsibility, sustainability, ethics, equality. And I think newer generations are far more inclined towards these anyways. They've got a stronger voice to fight the old, not so good beliefs of older generations. So I think this is a phenomenal time for the world to become a better place. I mean, I'm very optimistic about the future. Near term, yes, a lot of pain, climate change, this, that is going to be very difficult for a lot of people. Um, but as somebody said, he said, look, life starts with pain and crying.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
I think it's something that we all have to go through in order to be able to appreciate. Um, I mean, look, just in a more real world geopolitical sense, the most peaceful, probably 80 years in the last 500 years of history or longer, has been the last 70, 80 years since World War II, right? And it took World War One and World War Two and a Great Depression and colonization and stuff. It required that much pain in our global system for people to say, what the hell are we doing? And that World War II, I think, just snapped people, and we have had Europe, which was fighting each other for 500 years and across the world, right? I mean, look at that. They're the model for peace and union today, right? I mean, could you have imagined that in 1944, or in 1844, or 1744, or 1644? No, but here we are, right? So I think if we are intelligent about understanding why pain happens, I think we can use that to our advantage to think about the world after that and a world that short circuits that also. We don't have to let the whole cycle of pain go through. I think we can act with more wisdom. We need to understand why things are going wrong, what is it that people want, and what are the alternatives that we have. And I think we have a lot of choices.
I feel like a lot of a few things. One is understanding why pain exists or exposure to spiritual conversation or to that satsang, etc. It exposure feels key, right? I mean, I was exposed to it in different ways growing up, which is why I think about it now.
Yeah.
Do you think it's because we're privileged that we are talking about all this, whereas those who are not economically as privileged don't have the luxury to think about this?
Not at all. I think people who are not economically privileged in India are equally, if not more wonderful people than the privileged.
Yeah.
They're amazing people.
Yeah.
A lot of them are, right? Now, they are not perfect people.
Hmm.
None of us are perfect. So they may be very amazing in certain ways, and they may still be discriminatory towards certain groups or certain people. So I'm not saying that they're perfect and they're ideal and
Yeah.
all that. But I think, and that's why I think that this has got actually nothing to do with income or education or anything else. I mean, if you really think of it again, if you think from a spiritual perspective, the soul is the same. We all have the same soul. Its ability, its characteristics are the same.
Right.
So I think everyone has the potential to be an amazing human being, regardless. And that's why that argument that we have to go through a life cycle, and when we reach a certain income, then we'll think about being better human beings.
Right.
I think that is silly. I think when India also, when countries say that, oh, we have to, when we become rich, we'll think about sustainability. I'll say no, because your lack of sustainability is hurting your people today.
Right.
Right? It's not like it is you're all good and fine and you just want to earn more and become better. Our lack of sustainability is hurting our people today. People are dying, people are struggling, people are suffering. So to say one day we'll be rich enough and then they won't suffer, that's a silly idea. It's as stupid to me as trickle down economics. Right? And trickle down economics doesn't work. And this doesn't work. So we need to be, in fact, I think low income countries should take the lead in saying we don't need to become rich, but can we improve quality of life without chasing GDP growth and more mining and more extraction and more pollution and more health problems? Can we become sustainable? Can we become equitable? Can we become happier? Can we focus on well-being instead of GDP? Right? And I think it is far more important for poor countries to do that than the rich countries. It's actually the other way around. People have got this whole ESG thing opposite, that poor countries should keep developing the way they have been and rich countries need to do ESG. I think it's the other way around because we are prioritizing the wrong thing.
About us doing the right thing.
Yeah.
I relate to this pressure of needing to be a good girl, and this is something actually a lot of my friends who are women have also experienced.
Yeah.
Sometimes it just makes me want to break free of that and do something which is not a good girl.
Yeah.
So, is that what we're talking about? Do we need to feel righteous? Do we need to always feel like we have to do the right thing? Is that what you're talking
I
about?
think absolutely not, right? In fact, that's a social construct. It's a terrible construct, and in many countries, India in particular, this pressure to be a certain way, conform to certain things, is actually very, very harmful. And any psychologist, any counselor will tell you that, right? I think so. There's a concept of suppression versus sublimation. Okay, suppression is when we know something is expected of us. I want to behave a certain way. It is unacceptable to somebody or someone or whatever. Therefore, I suppress that behavior. I don't behave that way, but I behave the way I'm supposed to. Now, what will happen is that suppressed behavior is going to come out somewhere else. When I'm with my friends, when nobody's watching, when I'm, away from home, whatever it is, right? When I'm away from that environment that is suppressing me, that negative behavior will come out. But in front of people, I know I cannot behave this way. That's typically what ends up happening in our society. Sublimation is where we understand why that behavior is not good. It is not right. We study, we learn, we internalize it, and then we ourselves don't want to behave a certain way. Okay. Now, in your thing, there are two parts to what you said. One is, what does society judge as being a good girl? May have actually nothing to do with it being a good girl, right? In which case, you have to tell society that, oh, I disagree with this, right? But then you need the courage and that voice and understanding. At a certain age, you can say, in your whatever words and body language or what, you say, look, I don't agree with you and I'll do it my way, right? Now we want to be, but we do want to be responsible. We want to be good people. We want to treat each other well. So where society's expectations are clearly incorrect or silly or outdated or unnecessary, we can say, no, thank you. I will find my own way of being a good girl. I redefine what good girl means, which is the way I want to be. But while we are going through that journey, see, we may grow up to be adults, but spiritually we may still be young. So just like when a child throws something and breaks something, you don't treat them the way if I picked up a phone and smashed it on the floor, you would judge me very differently from if a 3-year-old did that. Yeah. We have to acknowledge that at some level, just because I'm a 30-year-old person or a 40 or 60-year-old man, woman, whatever, doesn't necessarily mean mentally I'm there, right? We are all over the place. So even for ourselves, we have to acknowledge that, yeah, there are times when we will do things, we are not perfect. We are on a journey to becoming perfect, right? So the idea of sublimation is like, so, I often say that there are times when I've been 100% vegetarian. Growing up, I was, reasonably non-vegetarian. I chose to be that time when I'm 100%. Most of the time, I say I'm 98% vegetarian or 99%. And honestly, I think that instead of saying the world should become vegan, if we say, can everyone cut down their meat consumption by 75%, it is actually quite doable. And you would cut down a lot of the ill effects of, both on health and environment without necessarily people must become vegan. In fact, that turns people off. So I say I'm a 98% vegetarian most of the time, right? Yes, I'll have one piece here. If my kids are not finishing their food, I hate food wastage, so I'll eat whatever's on the plate. I will eat. Doesn't matter what it is, right? But I won't order a non-veg dish. But if the table is ordering, I may taste it. Say, oh, this is really good. I'll taste one piece, right? And honestly, every time I taste, I say, did I miss it that much that I would want to order it? I feel no. At the same time, do I put extra pressure on myself? Like, I want to eat it, but I won't. Right? No. So I think if we get to that, that where we find a healthy balance between what we want and what is responsible, and we're somewhere in between. It teaches us self-control, but we are not denying ourselves to a point where we're suppressing and it'll explode and come out somewhere else, right? And I think that's a very healthy thing to understand about each other also, because as friends we can judge each other, as colleagues we can, as family members we can. I think we need to give people that space, but as long as we are studying and trying to, in an intelligent, becoming better. We can't just say, I am how I am, take it or leave it.
Yeah.
That is then again, you're kind of stuck in your own ideas and you're not really growing, you're not really thinking about what effect we have on the world and how you can be a better human being, a happier human being, etc. Right? So I think that process has to go together.
Yeah. That's so much of it comes again, like you said, everything boils down to our mindset, spirituality, the way we think, the way we behave.
100%. I tell people, so for me and for a lot of people around me, including my wife and my kids and all, so for example, practicing Reiki and the magnified healing, they study Buddhism, Vedanta, you study Islam, Christianity, shamanism.
Right.
It's a complete game changer. I'm the same human being, right? My height is the same, I look the same. The thought process is totally different. And therefore, my consumption process, the way I treat others, the way I think about the world. And I've been through my own phase, right? Where you want to blame, you think, oh, I know, like, a lot of people, you get very righteous. I know this is better. How, look at you. I've been through that myself, right? So if somebody else behaves like that, I can't condemn them and say, how are you behaving like this? Well, I've been there. I had my ego about, oh, I know all this spiritual idea. What do you know? Then you realize that, look, that's not the right way. And you keep studying and you keep learning and you become better and better. And just when you think, I'm pretty damn good, and then you look at yourself 5 years later, you say, what an idiot I was then, right? And so I feel that that's one way of looking at growth. Right? Every few years, when you look back on who you were, how you thought, what you did, you should feel kind of embarrassed about yourself then.
Yeah.
Right? Because you have changed and you have evolved and grown. Right? Not embarrassed, but you should feel like, look, clearly I didn't know too much back then. Or that time you feel you're the king, you know everything and you're super intelligent. But I think as we grow, we realize that. So we have to also keep reflecting on our own journey and our own change, and then creating space or allowing people to come to their own conclusions, guiding, supporting. The same teacher I told you about, the philosophy teacher, I once asked him, I used to get very frustrated about these things that, how do I communicate to others, right? Like, I've learned all this wisdom, I've become so evolved, how do I change others, right? He said, Manas, look, my job is not to teach the world. My job is to teach those who want to change. If somebody doesn't want to change, I can leave my knowledge with them. I can't force them to accept it. If I force them, they will nod politely. In their mind, they're thinking, what an idiot Manas is. When they go by, they'll do exactly what they wanted to do anyways, right? What have I achieved? Nothing. So put it out there. People accept it. Great. You want to know more? I'm happy to teach you more. You don't want to know more? Very good. Let's talk about other things, right? So I think it's a slow process. But I think more people do little more. I think again you have that circular loops kick in, S-shaped curve kicks in, and suddenly you say, wow, everyone is talking about this, everyone is changing. And we're all part of that journey, right? None of us created this wisdom. None of us created this knowledge. It's been coming for thousands of years. All we can do is recognize it, absorb it, learn, act. When we act, we realize that the gap is much bigger than we thought. So there's more to learn and more to act. And that becomes a lifelong journey across multiple lives, even. Yeah.
That reminds me of something a yoga teacher. I recently went for a retreat, so she was mentioning that you can change what you do. You can control yourself, even that is tough sometimes, but
Very
can't
tough.
control the world.
Yeah.
But like you said, you can help or educate people who want to listen or who want to change.
Yeah.
I guess if we talk, it's sort of taking me on the thread of individual action or what we can do by ourselves.
Yeah.
A lot of people feel, Arey, the big impact is caused by the government or industry. So what do individuals do? So if you can respond to this and maybe somewhere also bring in the work you're doing with the Mumbai Donut Collab, because that's going to involve citizens or individuals
Yeah.
coming together. That would be great.
So, for the longest time, I used to feel exactly that way. What can an individual do? I will change my behavior. I will not use plastic bag. I will not use plastic bag. What difference will it make?
Yeah.
And it's true, it makes no difference. The fact is, it makes no difference, right?
It does make a.
But
Huh.
there's a but.
Sorry.
But, hopefully a few other people get inspired by what I do, right? And then because I'm doing this, now I start doing something more. So it starts with a pet bottle, then it moves, I will not do this, I will not do this. Because we are on our own journey also, right?
Right.
Like the other day, my son who is 16 now, he said, ever since I started seriously, playing sports and exercising, I don't want to eat even the little junk food I used to. I don't want to eat it. I said, why? He said, I'm putting so much effort into being healthier. Then why would I undo my effort by eating junk food?
Right.
So I said, fantastic. Now that's a lesson, right? If you're just being a couch potato, you say, some of this, some of that. But the moment you start putting some effort, you become aware of all the other things that you're doing, which you could be doing better. And you become better and better, right? So similarly, then other people see you and learn, and they then go on to their own journey, and then somebody else does. And at the end of the day, look, what is a business? What is the government? It's a bunch of people, right? It is people who are constrained, who have got certain roles and who have got certain constraints. Like we talk about CEOs also are constrained by their, managers are constrained by their boss or by their customer and so on, right?
IAS officers are constrained by politicians.
Politicians and politicians are constrained by people.
Yeah.
They say लोगों को नहीं देंगे तो वो निकाल देंगे, right? So, or they're constrained by, other politicians or mafia, whoever, right? So everyone, at the end of the day, look, the thing is in this system, none of us are free, but we all are human beings. And we all have a personal side, we all have a public face and a private face, right? So if in our public face we can be more responsible, we sort of influence somebody, we trigger somebody, and tomorrow you never know who ends up in which role or in which situation, where if they have the courage and the lack of fear, they can take those ideas and multiply it, right? So I think that at an individual action as itself really doesn't matter, but its potential to create a spark. See, forest fires start how? It's a spark somewhere.
True.
Spark will say, who am I? I'm nobody. But it could, most sparks will just die out. Few leaves will die at the end of it, but some sparks become a forest fire, right? So if we keep doing the right thing, if we keep learning from others, if we keep pushing our own boundaries, and we don't do it for the world, we do it because it makes us happier, it makes us feel better, more responsible, more thoughtful. And actually, over a period of time, it's tough, but it actually makes your life much simpler, much healthier, happier, more relaxed, less stressful, right? So you do it for yourself. You don't do it for the world. It's not for social media. It's not to change the world. For a long time, I used to say, I say 80% of my effort, honestly, is to improve myself. 20% is to make the world a better place. And a lot of my NGO friends would say, that's so selfish. So much problems are there. How can you not be putting? I said, no, but if I really started understanding the value. It took me many years to understand that if I am not sort of acting from the best space possible, with compassion, with thoughtfulness, with a sense of giving, I will bring in those tendencies even into my social work. It'll be what will I get out of this? What will be my next career move, right? And then I'm not going to be able to do service in the purest way possible. But that again goes back to philosophical belief, right? Do your best and leave the results, right? To God, to the universe, whatever. I mean, they're all very simple things, but very difficult to. In fact, I said all the wisdom we need in the world, we are taught by the time we're 5 years old or 8 years old, right? Stitch in time saves nine, green, grass is green on the other side, all that stuff, right? Then it takes us the next 40 years to become adults and to understand that and to start applying it. I think kids these days are applying it much sooner. But we have to set examples, right? And I see those examples, right? I mean, I've got a phone here, and if you'll see, it's kind of battered, broken, and my kids are very embarrassed. The software is glitchy. The camera takes 5 seconds to come on, and my kids say, why are you using this phone? It's so old. Get a new phone. It's embarrassing. I said, no, but it works, right? Whatever job I need, 99% of the work I need to do it, are doing just fine. So now I could either listen to them and say, okay, fine, I'm going to get a new phone. Or I could have said, I want a new phone because of whatever. But I think this, hopefully, I hope, like you said, we can only change ourselves. We can't even change our kids, right? Forget about the world. But, I hope that they see this and somewhere it clicks that, yes, I don't need to keep upgrading because everyone else is, or I don't need to throw something if it is working fine. I have the pair of shoes that I normally use. It's a 4-year-old pair of sneakers, used, abused, torn, stitched up, repaired. Part of the reason I keep it is because it works still. And part of the reason is because I think it sends an example, at least to my kids, and I hope they learn from it, right? Yeah, so.
Yeah.
So we just do it. It saves me money, right? I could have gone through 3 pairs of shoes at the same time. I spent another 6-8 thousand on it. I saved that money and did something else, right? So
I'll come back to like the spiritual angle later when I ask questions about how what people can resources people can use to imbibe such thinking. But if I move to your work on Mumbai Donut Collab, can you explain what donut means and what where it's coming from and what you're doing there?
yeah, so donut economics, nothing to do with the donuts we eat. Donut economics is a model for sustainable development, developed by an economist named Kate Raworth, who used to be at Oxford. Her insight was, you got the sustainable development goals, which everyone knows. You've got these 17 goals. But sometimes there are conflicts between the goals. When you want development, you also create pollution, or to alleviate poverty, or to create infrastructure which creates, which affects climate, right? And the sustainable development goals don't give you a good way to think about these conflicts or the prioritization. So she took it and made it into a circle. And she said there are 12 basic needs that everyone needs to live a decent quality of life: food, water, housing, gender equality, political voice, transportation, energy, healthcare, education, 12 things. And then she said there are 9 environmental ceilings that we should not breach, because if we do, then the environment becomes unpredictable, and starts collapsing and creates all sorts of climate change and other problems, right? So these are things like your air pollution, ozone, water pollution, heat island effect, biodiversity loss, and so on. So there are 9 of those. So what she says, if you visualize it, and is
I'll put a
uh,
picture.
okay, you'll put a picture.
Yes.
The donut, you've got a ring in the center, you've got a hole in the middle, you've got openness outside. She said the hole in the middle, if we do not meet those 12 needs of people, it means people are falling through that hole. They're not going to live a decent quality of life. And if you're outside the donut, this open space, it means you're breaching your environmental boundaries. Your environment is unsustainable and unhealthy. The middle zone is where you can meet the basic needs of people without exceeding the planetary boundaries. And so it looks like a donut, and hence donut economics. And the idea is, how do we think about everything together systemically, not just focus on GDP growth, but quality of life? How do we balance all these needs? Because again, we talk, people can say, I need this, I need that. How do we balance those in a way where it is sustainable with environment, but a decent quality where we can say, oh, yes, I'm happy to be a human being living in these conditions. So that's donut economics. The Mumbai Donut Collab, as the name suggests, it's applying the donut economics model to Mumbai, using the donut economics model. And Colab is sort of, the idea is collective action, but also it's a laboratory. So the idea is to, through collective action, we bring various people together. Now, most of my work in the last 12 years has been in the social sector. So the first one, let's get all the NGOs together and let's work with government and so on. But I think there are three sort of meta problems in our world today. We talked a bit about capitalism, where it has gone from being this where you create products and services, sell it to others, earn a profit, do it responsibly, and so on, to becoming this, profit maximization, even by cheating people or doing things that are illegal or unethical, right? So what we have today, we don't have capitalism. We have a form of capitalism which is corrupted. Our democracy is not where it should be. And I mean that in a long arc of, democracy is supposed to be where people are supposed to be at the top of the thing, right? The government is supposed to work for people. Clearly, that is not the case in India or in most other countries, where the government does its own thing, and you're basically in India, you're buying votes to come into power, and then you do whatever you want and earn more power and money, and then you buy more votes, and that's really the cycle. And the reason for that, you can't blame the political system or the politicians, because people have given up their ability to demand, and that fear that comes in, or the greed that comes in, or the laziness that comes in. That's true of all classes, right? I mean, even at the middle class, we may vote, but voting is not enough, right? Your democracy cannot happen one day every 5 years. So we are not playing our role as citizens, and therefore we allow government to do things that are not good for the country sometimes. We need to become more accountable, more responsible citizens. And lastly, what I call our sense of neighborliness. Today we say, oh, that problem is government's job. That problem BMC's job. That problem CSR karna chahiye. Ye usko karna chahiye. Now I'm saying that it's not just about the rich people, right? I mean, even for people who are not rich, what can we do to make our city better, to help the people and the non-people, other living beings in our city? That sense of activism is, has probably declined over time. And the root cause of all these three is sort of the same. It is self-centeredness and fear, right? Self-centeredness and fear will make you not challenge the capitalism we have today, not challenge the democracy, and shy away from neighborliness, right? So the idea is to bring that back. Uh, is it going to be a top-down? Can somebody pass an order and make it happen? Absolutely not, right? So the idea is through collective action to bring people of Mumbai together, to help them understand what is going on in the city, good and bad. When things are bad, why is it that way? Let's not just complain ki aise hai. Let's understand why, right? And that's a lot of what you did and we did together in the conversations we have, is to understand why things like this, who are the actors, what are their constraints, how could the system be changed to make it better, who is acting truly in bad faith and who is just so constrained or scared or powerless that they have to do the wrong thing, they don't, or who just cannot imagine a different future, right? And through that process of collective action, we really need to improve the consciousness of everybody. The citizens need to become a lot more thoughtful about their contribution to the problems and what they can do. We hope that over time businesses will become more responsible, especially the startups, the social businesses, and so on. And I think government will also respond positively if they know that people are willing to support that,
Right.
right? And then, of course, the media needs to come in and academia. We see this as a long-term process. 10 years, 20 years, 50 years, God knows. Look, as long as human beings are there, there'll probably be problems. So it's not something we have to achieve in 2 years or 3 years. We want all sorts of organizations who are working for the betterment of Mumbai, and often they will not agree with each other, right? My view of what is better may be opposite of what your view is. But we need to sit down and discuss. Nobody knows, am I right? Are you right?
Yeah.
We need to sit down, discuss, and then use consensus to say, no, Bhairavi, your idea is right, and Manas, look, get in line, right? Because the way you're thinking is incorrect. So the idea is to get people together and to form deep partnerships amongst people who are working for the city, NGOs, etc. To get citizens together, make them members, and have an organization that actually is fully run and funded by citizens of Mumbai. No philanthropy, no CSR, so that people give money, they contribute their time, and then they have the right to sort of expect something that improves their own lives, right? But there is a right and a responsibility. Because they're not paying money and saying, now do this for me. I'm saying money and time, let's all get together and act on this. It's a bit utopian. I think it's a bit idealistic. But I say, look, why not? And let's try it. Let's try. Let's see how people respond. And I think so far a lot of people are responding positively. So we also need to step up our game and give them opportunities to engage and learn and contribute. And we're starting to do that. We're hoping for a big Mumbai Donut month in November. So a lot of discussion is going on around that. And I think over time, I hope that they say we always have two dogs or two whatever on our shoulders. Right? One is telling us the good thing, one is telling us the bad thing, the angel and the devil, or two wolves or two dogs or whatever. I hope we can, each of us can listen more and more to the good side and turn away from the negative voices around us. And I think if we are able to do that with enough people, we don't need everyone to become this Sant, Maharaj, whatever. That's not what we're aiming for here, right? I think if we become better human beings, more thoughtful, it has a multiplier effect. It allows us then to become even better and even better. And I think that's the journey that I've been on in my personal life. Got a lot of support from friends, family, because it's a nice big sangh.
Right.
So we're able to do a lot of these things together. And hopefully, then the amazing people I've met who think the same way. So now how do we all support each other, inspire each other, correct each other, help each other, hold each other accountable, and then take that to a larger and larger group. And everywhere when I talk about this, I find amazing people reciprocating or acknowledging and wanting to find some way to do stuff together. So again, like I said, I'm very optimistic.
How would someone who's listening based in Mumbai, how should they get updated?
You can go to www.mumbaidonutcolab, Mumbaidonutcolab.org. Maybe you can put up the
I
website
will.
also. Yeah. And you can sign up over there. Eventually, we'll add you to our mailing list and you'll get more updates. Um, You can also put up my email ID if you want, and you can, write to me directly and say, how do we get involved? We are adding more volunteers to our group. We're looking for partners. We're looking for citizens who want to act. So yeah, it's, there are many ways. You go to my LinkedIn page and, sort of send me a message there. Yeah, so a lot of ways to find out. And of course, I mean, I'm not the only person there. We
Yes.
now have, 60, 50, 60 fellows who have sort of done programs with us. We've got a bunch of volunteers. So there's a large group, and, so the other day is interesting. The daughter of a very good friend, who I'm not very much in touch with, somebody I've known for 30 years, she somehow got introduced to Shweta
Okay.
and heard about Mumbai Donut Colab and went to the website and saw my name there and then asked her parent, don't you know this person?
Yeah.
And they said, yeah, yeah, we do. Can I meet him? Such a roundabout way. And, we had a lovely conversation with this young lady,
Lovely.
spent 2.5 hours with her 2 days ago
Oh.
talking about various things. So, I think people are finding out and people are talking. And thanks to folks like you who get involved and want to do something with it, I think we'll reach out to a lot of people and have a lot of fun doing it. And I think, create something that we can be proud of over a period of time.
Hmm. If I may ask one detail before going on to the rapid fire section, which is why not philanthropy? If wealth is distributed that way and they have some of that money, why not philanthropy?
Um, so the idea of Mumbai Donut Collab is to be a connector. We are not going to do programs
Okay.
the way NGOs do. See, NGOs solve the real problems. So we want them to be partners so that they can work more effectively with each other and with other stakeholders. So our promise to partners, that our goal for partners is, can we help you to become 30% more effective at what you do? We don't want to replicate or compete with or complement them even. But yes, can we find gaps where things can be filled up? Yes. Now, why not philanthropy? Why not philanthropy? Because look, there are already good NGOs who are struggling to raise money. Now, if we also start competing for the same philanthropy money, then it's sometimes it can become a zero-sum game. Of course, philanthropies are so much more that it's not like they have to cut down somewhere to give to us. But the idea is that that idea of neighborliness, right? Why do we need to keep outsourcing the solution to somebody else, right? Um, and if you look at the maths, it actually works, right? So, for example, people say crowdfunding in India doesn't work. I say, look, the most successful crowdfunding I know of is right our Ganpati is starting today. All our pandals are what crowdfunding they do. Now, whether people give out of fear of God or because they want something from God or love of God or respect for God or a contribution to serve, whatever it is, people give.
True.
Even the poorest person comes and gives 10 rupees over there or 50 rupees over there, right?
Yeah.
People have money. It's not that they don't have. Now, the moment we say, see, if I say I want to go to 5 philanthropists and raise money from them, at one end, they're a customer. I have to serve them, their needs, whatever.
Yes.
But then, the people who are out there who I'm working for, it starts creating that this, you're not giving me anything. I'm not accountable to you. I'm working for you, but I'm not accountable to you. I'm accountable to them at the end of the day. Now, at some level, that's one of the issues that creeps in into the social sector, right? Who do you really work for? Your donor or your beneficiary, right? But if people can pay, they also feel that they're contributing to it and they're the right to demand, right? People say, I pay my taxes. All the people who pay taxes, I pay taxes, why am I not getting this?
Yeah.
A poor person can't say, I pay taxes, why am I not getting this? Actually, they're all paying GST and all also. So they are paying taxes, right?
Yeah.
So the thing is that we want people, now imagine if, this would be my dream. My dream would be 20 million people live in Bombay. If we can get 10 million to sign up as members, it's a crazy number, right? If we get 10 million to sign up as members at an average contribution of 100 rupees,
Per
10 million, 100 rupees per person per year, average
year.
per year,
Okay.
right? I would say the average really should be more like 1,000 because a lot of people will pay, and lowest membership tier we're keeping at 100 rupees per year. Then it can go higher. So people can pay different membership fees, right?
Makes sense.
But not too much. We're capping it right now. The thought we'll cap it at 1 lakh rupees per person per year, which is not a huge amount as a philanthropist, but it's a good amount of money. Now imagine if we can get 10 million people at an average of 1,000 rupees per person. Okay, what is that? That's 100 crore rupees. 1,000 crores.
1,000 crores. 10 million is sorry.
10,
10 million is 1 crore.
10 million, 1 crore into
Yeah.
1,000,
1,000
1,000
crores.
crore.
Wow.
Now you tell me, what can we do as a collective? Now this is not Manas that's sitting and deciding. It is members, it is partners. If we are able to raise 1,000 crores a year for the social sector, for our partners, the hundreds of NGOs working in Bombay and social businesses, where they're already raising money to do other things. But they say, you know what, this research we don't have money for. Okay, here is 5 lakhs. This we cannot do. Okay, let's use the money to fill the gaps in the system and make it stronger.
Right.
What an amazing society we can have. Right? So why do I need to go? Who's going to give me 1,000 crore rupees in 10 years from now? Nobody. But if we all are able to get together and convince people, deliver for them, inspire them, make them understand, I think it is doable. Maybe it's not, I don't know, but I believe it is.
That's very exciting. I feel like there's a lot of scope. Again, not working in silos, but coming together and collaborating.
And that's very hard, right? Because people
Yeah.
disagree a lot. I mean, we're not designed to to cooperate. We all have our egos. It's a very slow, very tough process. I'm not romanticizing how difficult it is going to be or how many failures we'll have or that the outcomes will all be suboptimal.
Right.
We'll never achieve 100% of any of this. This is utopian. 20 years, 50 years, 100 years, we will. One day I know it will get there, right? 10 years, 5 years, not going to happen. But I think we can make a lot of progress towards that goal, right? Yeah, it's one of those things that when you say, can you do urban agriculture in Bombay, people will say no. Then you say, oh, roads are there, this is there. BKC, you've got 4 big parking lots there. Your car burns in the summer, you get drenched in the winter. You build a structure over it, your car is also safe. You build a farm over it, you supply to the cafeteria, they'll get healthier vegetables at a lower price that they can never get from any market or any this thing. And it's in BKC, is the financial capital with the highest real estate in the country or the world. You can build farms over there and acres of farms, not like some balcony farm, right? You're talking about 5-6 acres of farms right in BKC without any displacement of land, people, nothing.
Which is supposed to be developed.
Yeah. So we just have to change our attention. I hope that that same attention we can shift on this whole crowdfunding thing and make it a members movement and attract the right people and get people to sort of use that great Mumbai spirit in a long-term sense.
Nice.
I'm a bit cynical sometimes. I say the great Mumbai spirit lasts from the time of a disaster to 72 hours after that disaster is over. Right? Then everything, all stops are out. Right? Everyone is one. We are all looking out for each other. उसके बाद में क्या हुआ? Right? If we can keep that Mumbai spirit 24/7 at a lower level, maybe 24/7, year after year, year after year, I think this city, this country has the potential to show the world truly what the 21st, what the 22nd century can look like. But not if we continue doing the way we are doing things today, then we are going to become an example of how to not. That's my fear and that's my hope.
I have a set of 13 odd questions which have been crowdsourced from people who know you, most of them. So the first question is, what's one good thing about Mumbai that you don't find elsewhere?
I think this is Gopal Zaveri. For those who know him, he sort of said something that which really sort of opened my eyes in a different way. I think the history of Bombay is actually very unique in many ways. It's a long answer to explain why, but I think the history of Mumbai, the history of the city over the last 500 to 1,000 years, even longer, I think it gives a lot of raw material to make it a unique place, and I'm coming to appreciate it more and more.
Lovely. Gopal Zaveri of Mumbai.
Of Mumbai March, yeah.
Lovely.
Yeah.
That's another organization people can check out.
Yes, and you should have him to talk to you sometime as well.
I intend to.
Yes.
Your favorite Mumbai street food?
Street food. I would have to say probably Pani Puri, Bhel Puri.
From where?
There's a bunch of places I like. I like the guy who's almost 50 meters from my building. He's really good actually. I don't have any particular place, but there's a lot of good stuff out there. Yeah.
Pani Puri is something I'm just so grateful that I can go and touch the feet of whoever invented the Pani Puri. Your favorite place in Mumbai to unwind?
To unwind, Juhu Beach, Carter Road. Yeah, probably actually Juhu Beach might be it actually. I don't go there enough, but I think it might be it.
Speaks to the importance of how important nature is to unwind, right? And we keep building confidence.
Yeah, and it's nature. I think the sea is nice, the sound of the sea. Because you want to avoid it on Ganesh Chaturthi on Sundays. But otherwise, yeah, I think and I grew up living very close to the beach, so I think somewhere maybe there's that connection as well.
Nice.
But it's pretty amazing. You look out there, you say, you know what, if I could go straight down that, I would end up in the Middle East, right? That's kind of cool, right?
Yeah.
It's kind of cool.
Yes. If you had a magic wand to change one thing about the city, what would it be?
I think from everything we've been talking, I would want people to be a lot more understanding towards each other and a lot more compassionate and a lot more grateful for what we have.
Awesome. I'm adding a new question. When you were talking outside of the episode, you mentioned an exercise for gratitude. Could you share that?
Yeah. So in some of these workshops I do, I tell people, and I've done it myself for a long time. I get one of those, you get these little clickers at any stationery shop. You put it on your finger and you can click and you can see how many times you've clicked. Get that, and through your day, think about what you're grateful for, and say it as a full sentence. Say, I am grateful for this because of this. Don't just say, and I say, even when I say thank you to people, I try and say, I don't just say thank you, I'll say thank you. And in my mind, I may say for whatever, right? Whatever they've done for me. Um, and in our workshop, we count that, right? And I say, you'll be amazed at how many times in a day you can be grateful. And if you do it for long enough, consciously, you will then start making it a habit. So when you're not holding, put this on your finger, you will still do that. You will think. And everyone I know who has done this has reported benefits after a 20, 30, 40-day period. And I think if we do it longer, I did it for 6 months once. I would not 24/7, but several hours in a day, I would have it. I think it really started changing my perspective towards the world that I live in and towards the people in the world. So that's something I would recommend. If it's the easiest, it's not even spiritual. It has got no relation to any religion, no teaching, nothing. It's like, as simple as it gets. And actually, I think, that I feel that gratitude actually can be the starting point for spiritual change and for changing the world. Coming around to that view, that can actually be that non-controversial, non-aligned kind of starting point, I think can be very powerful.
Wow. Thank you. Thank you for sharing. Um, what is one thing you're most excited or passionate about now?
Wow. And if you say thematically, I'm probably most excited about the potential of urban agriculture.
Okay.
Um, I'm also very excited about the potential for philosophy and spirituality. So I'm also looking at sort of my work and sort of, in a sense, career choice around that. I think there's some other things. I think, yeah. So maybe.
If you could meet anyone in the world, it could be someone who existed in the past also. Who would it be and why?
Oh, wow.
And you could spend like some 1 or 2 hours with them.
1 or 2 hours. Wow.
Yeah.
I thought 1 or 2 days you were going to say,
1 or 2 days
or
of
1 or 2 months.
yes.
You know, this is a really tough one. I think I might choose Jesus Christ.
Oh.
Yeah, I think in recent history, last 2000 years, and again, a lot of stuff is, how things have been, what the narrative has been shaped and formed in the politics. Leaving that aside, I think whatever I know of him, I think one of those people who really knew how to work from the heart. And the ideas of gratitude, forgiveness, oneness, I think really embodied that. I mean, there's a lot of our spiritual and religious leaders and sort of avatars have been. I think I may choose him though. The other I would choose is Avatar Meher Baba, who is my own, sort of spiritual guru, much more recent. Um, but I think if I had a choice, I'd probably go with Jesus Christ. Yeah.
Nice. Very nice. Um, what is one message that you would have for Mumbaikars in terms of an actionable step that they can, or maybe even a thought process change?
So as an actual step, start picking up a few things you can do
Okay.
that are more responsible. Cut out plastics from your life, or do composting, or really look at how you can reduce your water usage, or see how you can reduce the amount of transportation you use and move as much as possible to public transportation. Look at how little you can consume. So, certain personal behaviors which are tangible, physical, that you do every day, how do you change it to become more sort of sustainable, generate less garbage, use less resources? And I think mental process, I would say probably gratitude. Get your kicker.
Yes, thank you. Message for citizens of residents of India in general.
I don't know, probably the same. Look, let's just understand we're all interdependent, we're all interconnected. So I think, if we can respect each other, It doesn't mean letting people do whatever they want.
Hmm.
People have to follow certain norms, they have to follow certain laws. I'm not saying that excuse the bad behavior of certain people, not at all. But let's not also accept the bad behavior of others, of certain group, because we feel aligned with them, right? Or from my community, so whatever you do is okay, or my family. No, I think let's be objective. Let's understand people. Let's break down the barriers, and let's be kinder to each other, and let's be more thoughtful in our behavior, and get a clicker.
If you were BMC commissioner for a if you were BMC commissioner, what's the first step you'd take?
Oh wow! Oh, I never thought of that. I think the first thing I would do is over a 3 month period, I would invite all the good social sector organizations and citizen groups and just listen to them and question them and dig deep into what they do, why they do it, challenge them on why they can't do it better, and understand what our government machinery can do to enable their work. Um, in parallel, what I would do is try to identify who are the best officers at the BMC in all the different groups. Who are those people who, if given a chance, would move heaven and earth to do the right thing, and of course, competent and knowledgeable to do it, and see how to put them into positions of power.
Hmm.
And I think then, if you get these two groups together, you'll have magic. You'll have absolute magic. Then nothing, no, nobody can stop that. If you've got the right group of government workers whose whole job is they understand the system so well,
Hmm.
and if you can find the right ones and empower them and give them space, and you get the right number of citizens who care about the city and the people, you get them together, job done. Job done. Then I can chill for the next 3 years of my tenure, and they will take care of things. I think that's how I think from the outside. Of course, BMC commissioner means you have a lot of pressures, a lot of demands, and all. I'm sure those are there. So it's not as easy to do this,
Right.
but this is where I would start at least.
A question that one of our Leap Fellows, Roy, had asked is how would you influence? Now you're back to being you.
Yeah.
How would you influence the government officials who hold so much of the power to make decisions for the better?
Whew. See, I don't know. Because I empathize with their constraints also and their perspectives. And it's not just about they are constrained by politicians and businesses. They're also constrained by people who are not genuine or honest or who keep want to fighting with each other and want their benefit, right? Like why are courts so clogged up? It's not because of politicians and businessmen, because people are fighting with each other all the time. I want this, you want this, I will use my influence. It's very hard. I mean, really empathize. The more I spend time with them, the more I empathize with them. And I say, yeah, I would honestly, I would jump off a building if I had to live their life, if I had to live their job, right? So at some level, it's commendable that they do it. But of course, if you can empower them or create the space where they can do it in a better way, that would be nice. I'm not saying that they're all perfect human beings and stuff. There are a lot of every barrel has its rotten apples, right? Um, I don't know. I mean, I would encourage them to get a clicker. I would encourage them to study more philosophy.
Right.
I would encourage them to form deeper relationships with the right people in society who can support them.
Hmm.
Today, I think a lot of the journalists and activists in Bombay say that BMC, for example, is becoming less and less accessible, not like the way it used to be earlier. I'm sure they have their reasons. Maybe they get blamed for things unfairly because of media, social media, so they get they want to hide rather than open up. So I would encourage them to find good friends across the aisle. See, the best, every country, when it has done the best, is when good people from opposite sides can work together. Whether it's at a community or it's in parliament or it's in Congress or it's the UN or whatever, right? The same applies to a city. So if the municipal corporation can find those right people and say, look, let's work together, let's talk regularly. And if we can make that happen, I think that's the best way to influence and give them that space to do things differently
Yeah.
without fearing backlash and so on. It's a tough one though. It's hard.
Last three questions. Last four questions. First one, what would you, if you got a set of shareholders or investors in a room, what would you educate them on? If they're willing to be educated.
Um, I think the first thing I would say is that, look, I mean, it depends on what kind of investor. Is it their wealth or are they managing wealth for others? So let's assume that it is their own
Yeah,
money.
their own
Okay,
money.
so it is their own wealth. Yeah, I would say, look, what will make you happiest and proudest,
Mm.
through the rest of your life, right? Is it keeping this wealth and looking at how to invest it to make more money? And look, all of them are probably philanthropists already. So they're already giving. It's not like they don't care about the world and all, right? But how much can you step up that giving? And what will it take for you to step up that giving and feel that it actually increases your sense of well-being, happiness, reputation, etc. Um, without saying, it's not like I'm saying give away all your money. So how much can we push that? And then how can you give it into people and in ways which will have the maximum impact?
Right.
Not the 1 year, 2 year programs, or some research report, but let's think more structurally. What does the city need? What can we do? How can we do it long term? So I'd urge them to think about giving in a lot more long term and collaborative fashion, and to recognize that they actually could give a lot more than they currently do and actually be much happier and much more powerful in society, much more respected, etc., if they did that, than try to hold on to their wealth and build their business only. And and what I hear from a lot of philanthropists is a lot of family dynamics improve with philanthropy. Right? Like, kids have more respect for the parent, you sort of get along, you do something together. So I think that's another way to think about that. Actually, your personal life is far better off, I feel. And a lot of people, and I'm not saying that I think, a lot of people have told me this, when they're able to do a lot more work for society and through philanthropy. So I think it's a win-win all around.
We spoke about mindsets so much. What are five, oh, sorry, any number of books that you would recommend the listener to pick up?
Okay, I think for let's talk about a little bit more about climate and development. There is a book called "This Changes Everything" by Naomi Klein. It's a great book about climate change and activism. There's a book called Drawdown, which are ideas on how to reverse climate change. That's a great book. Sunita Narain wrote a book called Conflict of Interest, which is again the industrial climate conflicts. I think that's a very real world look at how things work in India. The beautiful, beautiful book called The Sixth Extinction, which is what we are going through right now, the sixth wave of mass extinction in Earth's history. And this looks at how it is playing out in different places and really takes like a 4 billion year view on history, on Earth and life and so on. It's so beautifully described. This journalist, New York Times, I forget her name. She travels to all the different places in the world and sees how climate change is affecting that place. And it's almost like a travel book come climate change, beautiful book. Um, I think the story of my experiments with truth by Mahatma Gandhi, I think it's a story, it's very honestly written. Whatever people may feel about him, but I think it documents how he went from where he was in life to how he became who he became, right? And it reminds us that people aren't born as a great person, they become. And it becomes partly through incidents that happen to them, but also partly because their own conviction, their willingness to learn and change. I really enjoyed that book a lot. Man's Search for Meaning is a phenomenal story, a really good one. Um, those are actually the minimum, some of the books I would recommend. I think there are a lot of other great, tremendous books out there. Uh, there's one more, not a book, but there's a podcast I'm listening to right now by William Dalrymple and historian Anita Anand. It's called Empire, and really talks about empires over the last 500 years and crosses the world. And it's a fascinating history, and it just tells us how little we understand, how little we know. And when you start looking at that's another thing, when you start looking at human history across time and space, you realize the same themes come up. And one of the things he talks about is how kings are often the most anxious people because they know anytime I can. And not today, kings are sort of figureheads, right? 100 years ago, if you're a king, you're constantly under attack. Your courts person will kill you. Your brother will kill you. Your son will kill you. So you know how we think about kings, but they were actually the most paranoid, the most at risk people, and they really most of them never enjoyed their life. Right? They thought it a misery. And a lot of kings still say that, yeah, I would love to not be king, right? But they see it as a responsibility that they are stuck with. But Empire is an amazing story about human story, and I think when you read that, you realize how lucky we are, given where we are in the 21st century, and given where we are in India and in a place like Bombay. I think generally realize that human history has been extremely violent, extremely unsafe, extremely ego-driven, extremely destructive. Um, and we are no different. So we may think we have a unique history and all, but we have done a lot of crap. A lot of crap has been done to us. How do we change that? Is, I think, the way forward.
Hmm. Uh, who are some people you'd recommend listeners to follow on social media?
Uh, let's pass that question. I'm very bad at that. I don't know who to recommend. I really don't follow too many people on social media. I read a lot. I come across a lot of stuff, but if you see how many YouTube channels I
Right.
follow and stuff, very, very, very few. I do a lot of my reading on LinkedIn and Medium.
Right.
I enjoy Quora a lot. I learn a lot of stuff. There are a lot of intelligent writers on Quora. Um, if I spend more than 5 minutes on Facebook, my brain feels like it's getting fried. So I go on Facebook twice a year for something like the other. I'm out in 5 to 7 minutes. Instagram and the others I don't use at all. Twitter I don't use at all. But yes, I don't know who I don't
On
know.
LinkedIn?
I don't know. I mean, stuff just pops up and I read it and I enjoy it, and I don't know who to follow as such. I mean, I would recommend following somebody like Samir Sisodia from Rain Matter Foundation. I enjoy his stuff. You know, but there are a lot of people. I mean, I know so many amazing people. It's unfair for me to pull out a few. I think that I think if you're open minded, the amount of human intelligence, wisdom, decency is mind blowing. It's mind blowing. I mean, there are amazing human beings out there. I get to read and learn a lot from a lot of this. I can't think of a few people who I. Yeah.
But the next question will be about a few people, which is who would you like to see, or who do you think I can reach out to for the next episodes?
Oh, I'll give you a long list, but let's do it offline.
Yeah.
One more book I'll recommend is Meditation and Life by Swami Chinmayanand.
Okay.
I think in one book he summarizes a lot of the basic concepts of Vedanta and how to practice it and what it means and why. As an introduction to spirituality, I can think of no better book.
Awesome.
If you want something bigger, then his Bhagavad Gita is a very good this thing, the holy Bhagavad Gita. But yeah, meditation and life, and again, it's completely from any age, any faith, any belief. Believe in God, don't believe in God, doesn't matter. You can still benefit from
Lovely.
that. And I think that's the idea of spirituality. It should not get tied to God and religion. It should be completely separate from that.
Awesome. I love how we came full circle and came back to this topic, which is great because every time I feel we talk about the physical world, we talk about money, we talk about all of this, but when we talk about sustainability in like even in among consultants, where do we bring up these, right? So I feel this conversation for me has been very important because we've touched upon those.
And unfortunately, we don't. And I think that's a big weakness in the social sector.
Yeah.
That we try to turn away from this and only solve it with policy, finance, law, there's capacity building, management, and all.
Right.
Those are all important. Don't get me wrong, those are all important. But the direction from the top is not right. You will end up using those tools in the wrong direction. And the direction from the top ultimately is our inner conscience or soul or whatever you want to call it.
Right.
At the end of the day, that dictates everything, right? And all the psychology tells us, and science will also is telling us that we may not want to listen in 10 years, 20 years, 50 years. That's what we'll come to understand, right? All the questions of that we cannot answer in science will take us towards directions of understanding the universe and soul and the design and so on.
Right. With that, we can come to the end of the podcast. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me, and I enjoyed the conversation.
Thank you. I really hope many people listen, those who want to listen. Can't force.
The best panel discussion I was ever on
Yeah.
had 5 of us on stage and 4 people in the audience. And I loved the conversation. We all got off the stage, we sat around in a circle, we chatted for an hour. It was amazing.
Wow.
Some of the panelists were very upset. What is this? I said, "ठीक है, I mean, now it is what it is. Let's have it." So even if one person hears this or 100,
Yes.
I would say, look, we should have fun doing it.
Yes.
It was the afternoon well spent.
Yes. Thank you so much. Thank you, Marcus.
Absolutely, very